Hey guys, tonight we float along the calmest edge of science, letting simple, beautiful facts about Earth help your mind loosen its grip and your body find that heavy, cozy feeling. We'll move slowly, in second person, like I'm walking beside you with a small flashlight, pointing out friendly details. Seas that glow when you touch them, forests that share food in the dark, tiny creatures that wait for years and then wake as if nothing happened, and the quiet sparks that move through your brain while you rest. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing our sleepy map of the world grow in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Start with one easy inhale through your nose. Hold it for just a beat. Then let it go, longer than the inhale, like the tide sliding back across a smooth beach. Do it again without forcing anything. Shoulders fall. Jaw clenches. Your tongue drops from the roof of your mouth. Every quiet adjustment is a small message to your nervous system. We're safe. We're here. It's okay to slow down. You might not feel like a walking science experiment, but you are a gentle masterpiece of cooperation. About 30 trillion human cells are doing their jobs right now without needing your permission. Woven through them are neighbors, a roughly one-to-one crowd of microbes that help digest your food, train your immune system, and even whisper to your mood. They don't make you less you. They make you more capable. You're not a single thing. You're a community that agreed to get along. Inside your skull, trillions of tiny electrical events are happening in quiet patterns. A neuron nudges charged particles along, pauses at a synapse, passes the message to the next cell. It's not a lightning bolt. It's a city at night, every block glowing, signals timing themselves so thoughts feel smooth. Even in deep sleep, those waves keep rolling. They just slow and synchronize like a stadium of phone lights switching from a chant to a lullaby. If you could see yourself in perfect darkness with a camera sensitive enough, you'd notice a faint shimmer coming off your skin. Your body gives off a tiny, harmless light as molecules trade energy. You can't see it, and you don't have to. It's simply proof that living tissue hums along even when you're still. That hum is part of what makes this moment feel warm and normal. Breathe out again and imagine your sigh stepping into a very old conversation. Carbon moves from you to the air, from air to leaf, from leaf to animal, to soil, to ocean, and back again. It's the planet's slow breath. Rocks lock some of it away. Volcanoes return some of it. Forests store a lot, then release it as wood decays and as fires pass through. You don't need to solve the whole cycle tonight. You only need to notice that you're already participating, doing the simplest, most human task. In, out, repeat. Now, drift a little farther back. The calcium in your bones formed in stars that lived and died long before this planet had clouds. Heavier elements, iron for your blood, oxygen to bind to it, were forged and flung into space, gathered, and eventually settled here. When you touch your chest, you're feeling star material that learned to make a heartbeat. No heroics required from you. Just a soft recognition that your story is older than you, and that's oddly comforting. Set a pace with me for the rest of the night. A fact arrives, you look at it, you let it pass. Another arrives, you do the same. You don't chase them. You don't have to remember them. Your brain is good at keeping what it likes and forgetting what it doesn't need. Think of tonight like beachcombing. You keep a few shells because they make you happy. You admire the rest and let the water take them back. Check in with your body again. Maybe your left hand is heavier than your right. Maybe your ankles feel a draft. These are signals from tiny sensors in your skin, muscles, and joints, all feeding quiet data up to your brain. Even your eyes, when you stare at one spot, make micro movements called saccades so the image doesn't fade. Your balance depends on grains of calcium crystals rolling in gentle arcs inside each ear. You're a bundle of clever tricks, most of them silent, all of them kind. Before forests lifted their first leaves, Earth's seas held layered mats built by microbes, little communities that trapped sediment and made oxygen. Life back then wasn't waiting for us. It was busy being itself. Oxygen was dangerous for most early organisms. It changed chemistry, rusted things that had never met oxygen before. Over long spans of time, some lineages adapted. The air shifted. The oceans changed. New possibilities opened. It wasn't dramatic up close. It was patience, repeating the same small success until the world quietly turned into something new. That's a good model for tonight. Patience changing your inner weather. A breath here, a loosening there. Easy repetition until your body realizes the safest thing it can do is nothing at all. If thoughts parade by, let them. Thoughts love a parade. You can watch from the curb and wave without joining. If a worry insists on carrying a banner, nod at it and hand it a tiny balloon. Wry smile optional. Gentle sarcasm encouraged. You're still in charge of how much energy you give anything, including me. Look at the room with soft eyes. The lamp has a temperature. The floor has a sound when you shift your heel. The air has a density that changes as the fan pushes it across your cheek. Everything you notice is the nervous system receiving friendly proof of safety. Nothing sudden, nothing sharp. If you need to scratch, scratch. If you want to roll to your side, roll. Comfort is not a luxury here. It's the whole point. Your breath is now automatic, slow, stable. The back of your tongue feels heavier. Your lips part a little. Somewhere, a shoulder blade decides it's done trying. That's the door. You're allowed to walk through. Let one more image glide in. The atmosphere is a library of every exhale that ever was. Ancient fires, wet forests, the breath of animals in winters and summers, your own whispers from childhood. When you inhale, you borrow a sentence. When you exhale, you return it with a note in the margin. Good night. No big thesis required. Just a quiet line added to a very long book. You and I will wander a while tonight, over glowing bays, into root-laced soil, across deserts that once were green, through the hidden architecture of reefs, and into the tiny decisions of clever animals. But we won't rush. If a detail feels like too much, let float off. The good ones will circle back on their own. I'll keep your load light. I'll say names when they matter and skip them when they don't. I'll translate the jargon. I'll pick pathways that feel like walking downhill. When something sounds wild, trees sharing sugars, fish walking on mud, birds sleeping while they fly, I'll explain in a way you can hear without tightening your jaw. You don't have to grip any of this. You're here to rest while the world shows off a little, like a shy friend who finally admits they play piano. The planet has range. Soft, bright, deep old. And you? You get to sit on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, and listen without clapping between songs. One last check before we slide to the next part. Loosen your forehead. Let your cheeks go neutral. If an image from your day tries to replay, allow it to be blurry, like a photo loading slowly on bad Wi-Fi. You don't need a perfect picture to move on. You just need enough softness to stop caring. The rhythm is set now. Gentle breath, easy attention, small smiles when something is delightfully weird. You're not operating heavy machinery. You're floating, and the science ahead will come to you like the surface of a lake comes to meet a falling leaf, quietly, completely, with no splash. All right, keep whatever position is kindest to your shoulders. Let your hands be lazy wherever they landed. The room can stay exactly as it is. The planet will do the spinning. I'll handle the navigation. You can close your eyes if you haven't already, or keep them half open and hazy. Either way, you're doing it right. We're going to let one more breath arrive and leave. Then we'll step into water that glows when you touch it and listen for songs that travel farther than cities or storms. But that's for the next stretch. For now, this is enough. You, breathing, stardust bones resting on familiar furniture, a small choir of cells and microbes keeping the lights on while you feel heavier and heavier. Good. Stay right there. We'll move forward without moving at all, at the speed of calm, letting the night do what nights were made to do, carry you. You step into warm, dark water, and the night answers with light. Your toes curl into wet sand. You take one slow step, and the wave around your ankle sparks a soft blue that hangs for a second, then fades as if the ocean just exhaled. You try it again, one sweep of your hand, and your fingers sketch a comet tail across the surface. It looks like magic. It's not. Sorry to ruin the mystery. It's tiny living things, most of them single cells, reacting to the little bit of turbulence you just made. They don't heat up like a bulb. They make cold light, a clean chemical flash, on and off in an instant, as if they carry pocket-sized stars and flick them when they feel a wave or a fish or you. You can picture those cells if you want, but you don't have to. One kind looks like a small, spiky ball. Another looks like a clear bead with a faint glow in its core when disturbed. None of them is trying to impress you. They're doing what they've done for a very long time. Glow to startle a predator. Glow to say, I'm not ideal food. Glow because a bump nudged a switch inside. Your trail of light disappears, and the sea goes black again. But something sticks with you. The idea that the ocean doesn't need the moon to shine. It can make its own night sky. You keep walking, gentle, because the surf is a lullaby all by itself. Every step sets off another quiet ribbon of blue. It's like the water is drawing pictures for you only when you move, then erasing them the moment you stop. The quiet sarcasm writes itself. The ocean is basically a very patient etch-a-sketch, but the feeling is sincere. It's beautiful in a soft way, not a fireworks way. Tiny, living lanterns that wake for a second and go back to their business. You crouch and let your palms rest on the surface. When you push down, the light blooms under your hands. When you lift, the glow dimples, then goes. This, by the way, is the same world that runs your lungs. The same drifters that light up your night are cousins to the ones that turn sunlight into sugar and release oxygen as a side effect. You breathe a lot of ocean without ever tasting salt. Most of the time, you don't think about who's making that oxygen. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe it's enough to say thank you in a whispered thought and keep your breath slow. If you held up a single drop of seawater right now, trapped in a little loop of your thumb and index finger, and somehow paused everything inside it so you could study the scene, you'd see a crowd. Thousands of creatures in a poppy sea to volume. Sometimes millions in richer swirls. Most of them clear, many of them shaped like small sculptures designed by an artist who loves spirals and glass. You'd see diatoms with glass houses, little crustaceans that twitch like bees underwater, baby stages of things you recognize when they're grown, tiny fish, miniature crabs wearing the sea like a giant hat. Bacteria, too. Viruses by the thousands. It sounds like chaos, but it behaves more like a neighborhood. Eat, be eaten, drift, divide, sink, rise. The sense of scale is the lull here. You are large and slow. They are small and countless and quick. You can imagine them breathing with you. Not literally, but in rhythm. Your inhale is their day. Light, sugar, growth. Your exhale is their night. Slow, sinking, drifting in the dark. Some of them make molecules the air loves to cling to, tiny invitations for water vapor to gather and become cloud. They make weather out of breaths. They feed the smallest grazers, which feed the slightly bigger mouths, which feed fish, which feed larger fish, which eventually feed whales. The little glowing signatures at your feet aren't just pretty. They're part of a supply chain that has no warehouse and never closes. You let the water climb to your shins. You sway with it. The shore behind you is a line of lights and voices. Out here, the sound changes. The wave noise goes rounder as it breaks against you, low and regular. Your body naturally falls into that rhythm. In, out. The fan at home has the same feel, which is probably why fans are comforting. The world is full of slow, repeating noises that quietly tell your nerves, we've been doing this a long time. It's safe to copy. A bit farther out, something huge and gentle is talking in a voice you can't hear directly, not with the parts of the ear you're used to trusting. It's a voice so low you'd have to feel it in your chest, or see it on a screen to notice. A whale calls, and the call slips into a layer of water that carries sound like a long hallway. The note can go on, a piece of music stretched thin enough to travel for hundreds of miles, sometimes for entire basins when conditions line up. The ocean is good at listening in low tones. It keeps secrets, but it also keeps songs. You don't need to memorize frequencies. You could just picture a blue whale's message sliding through a deep channel as if the water itself is passing a folded letter from one coast to another. Somewhere far away, another whale hears it and answers with a similar tone, maybe not identical. Different populations use different sets of notes, like regional accents passed down year to year. Humpbacks are the composers everyone quotes because their songs are long and change over seasons. Patterns appear, flourish, fade, new ones take their place, almost like trends on a sleepy social network where nobody's mad and everybody's humming. You stand still and let the stage glow around you fade back to black. The sea is a city with the lights turned low. Above, a gull yells because gulls have zero chill at any hour. Far below, the largest animals on Earth are holding a conversation you can't hear, and that somehow makes it more intimate, like catching a whisper through a wall and knowing it matters even if you miss the words. The little ones here at your ankles flash and fade. The giant ones out there sing and wait. Both are doing what they need to keep going, signaling, sinking, trying again. You picture the old stories of sailors hearing strange music at night. You give those sailors a pass. When the world is dark and the water is restless, any low rumble could be a voice. And sometimes it is. The ocean carries sound better than air does, especially the bass notes. You could, in the right place and the right season, be standing on a quiet beach and feel a pressure change you'd swear was thunder, except the sky is clear. It's life, throwing its voice across a planet. The whales don't sing for you. They sing for each other, to find, to choose, to coordinate. Their calls can map distance and shape. Their songs can weave a social fabric across animals that rarely touch. That feels familiar because you do a softer version. You leave messages that travel, texts, voice notes, a comment saying you're listening for Danong at 11:47 p.m. The ocean has been doing that kind of thing longer and without a single battery. Tilt your head and imagine the path from the glow at your fingertips to the food a whale swallows in a slow, open-mouthed sweep. The tiny plants make sugar from sun. Little grazers eat them. Small fish eat those grazers. Bigger fish eat the small fish. Krill, those shrimp-like creatures whales love, swarm where currents bring the feast together. A whale rolls through with its mouth like a parachute, filters down, and for a moment an entire buffet is inside one animal. Even in sleep, you can hold that chain lightly, not as homework, but as a picture of how many quiet steps are hidden inside one big moment. There's another gentle loop here. Whales move nutrients. They feed at depth and release some of what they don't need higher up, where sunlight can grab those nutrients and fuel another microscopic bloom. Think of it as stirring a giant pot very slowly, forever. Everything helps everything else without a committee meeting. Your sarcasm can rest. The elegance is enough. You lift your hand and let drops fall back in. The glow has faded now. The plankton won't spend their entire energy budget keeping you entertained. They did their spark, and they're fine with silence. That's its own lesson. Use your light when it matters, then keep it. A good bedtime rule. If you had a microscope here, the scene would look like a floating parade. Some diatoms would be encased in tiny glass boxes arranged like stacked coins. Some would be delicate nets. Some creatures would wear hair like oars and swim in slow spirals. A few would flash if touched, like a tiny alarm call. In the mix, viruses would dart in ways that aren't really darting. They'd simply drift until collisions happen, because collisions always happen in crowds. A larval fish would look surprised, though that's your projection. Copepods would jitter like they drank a double espresso, though they didn't. They're just built to twitch. You're tempted to assign motive to all of it. Don't. Be the quiet aquarium visitor who knows the glass goes both ways. You look up and let the sky be bigger than your thoughts. Somewhere under that dark, a humpback adds a new phrase to a song that will be picked up by others like a melody on the wind. Somewhere in the shallows, a burst of light frightens a fish, and the predator behind it says, "No thanks, too flashy," and veers off. Somewhere in a lab, a drop from a bay is spreading into a thin film on a slide, and someone is smiling because the sample has everything: spirals, stars, clear bells, little swimmers, and they know they'll be late to bed, and they don't mind. You bring your focus back to your breath without trying. The wave sets the tempo. You match it. In out. The fan at home does its little airplane impression. Your eyes feel heavier now. Your shoulders are well past caring. The glow you saw earlier is easy to recall even with closed eyelids. You can paint with it in your mind. One slow brush stroke across a calm black surface, a soft bloom of light that follows your hand and dissolves behind it. You don't need a passport to be here. You could be in your bedroom with a memory of a video you saw where a surfer's trail turned neon with each kick. You could be in a city apartment, replaying a vacation moment where the boat's wake wrote blue calligraphy on the sea. The point isn't the location, it's the gentleness of the physics. Small bump, small glow. Big body, low note. Everywhere. Life using simple moves to say, "I'm here." When you step back toward the shore, the sand feels warmer than the water. You can still coax a small spark with a heel twist, but you don't need to. The picture is inside you now. You've got the design language. Dark canvas, light on touch, fade. The same vocabulary will show up later when we look at fireflies and city leaves, and anything else that takes light and returns it softer. If your mind wanders to how fragile all of this can be, that's human. The ocean is big, but not invincible. You don't have to carry the whole thing tonight. You're allowed to put it gently on a shelf and pick it up in the morning with coffee when your brain wants to be awake and useful. Right now your job is one thing: drift. Let the whales handle the night dispatch. Let the plankton manage the lighting cues. A last look back. The water behind you is blank again, which is perfect. The show is meant to disappear. The value isn't in keeping it. It's in letting it wash through you. Like a whale call that passes, like a note that lands in ears you'll never meet. You had nothing by gripping. You had everything by softening. You step onto the sand and feel the grainy give under your arches. Far down the beach, a few more bright streaks flare under someone else's feet, a quick constellation in the surf. You send them a quiet wish, good sleep, stranger. The night accepts your thought and tucks it beside a low, distant song, deep and patient, crossing water in slow motion. The next part waits just up the shore, where a creature rewinds itself to childhood to try again, and another grows back what it lost as if it never happened. But you don't hurry to meet them. You carry the glow with you for a while longer, as simple as a breath, as soft as foam around your ankles, as steady as a long note traveling farther than your eye can imagine. You follow the foam line until the beach thins to rocks, and in that tide pool quiet you meet a creature that treats time like a soft ribbon it can loop back on itself. Drift there with it, small, glassy, a bell that barely weighs anything. When this jelly is stressed, injured, or simply done with the whole being old thing, it doesn't slog forward. It drops back. It folds itself from the drifting adult state to the rooted childhood form, a tiny polyp on a rock. Not metaphor, not wishful thinking, an actual reversal. Like a butterfly changing back into a caterpillar, then later deciding to try the wings again. It's called Turritopsis dohrnii, the immortal jellyfish. And yes, that nickname is dramatic, but the behavior is real. As long as nothing eats it or shreds it beyond repair, it can keep rolling the tape back to the start and replaying life on a loop. You can picture the steps without getting technical. Adult jelly drifting. Life gets rough. Cells rewrite their job descriptions. Tissues reorganize. The bell becomes a little colony glued to stone, quietly budding new jellies that will one day lift off and try the open water again. It's not cheating death so much as dodging it with a bureaucratic form. I'd like to revert to an earlier version, thanks. We do software rollbacks. The jellyfish does a body rollback. Somewhere a programmer feels seen. If your shoulders drop a bit at the thought, good. Not because you and I could do that trick, but because nature has more scripts than we assume. The jelly isn't special in being alive. It's special in refusing the single path. And standing here in the dark, you can let that be a low, kind lesson. Beginning again isn't fake progress. It's survival. You step from rock to rock, careful with your toes, and a little star-shaped shadow slides under a ledge. A starfish, calm as a coaster. If something bites off one of its arms, no panic. It begins a project. Cells near the wound switch from daily maintenance to construction mode. They build scaffolding. They lay down new structures. Weeks turn to months, and a brand new arm appears, patterned to match the old ones like a perfect replica from a designer who never lost the blueprint. Some species can go further. Given a piece of the central disc, a single limb can regrow an entire body. That's not a rumor. That's Tuesday for a competent starfish. You don't have to picture every cell. It's enough to imagine the tide coming and going while a tiny factory inside the star hums overtime, following quiet instructions. The star doesn't hold a meeting about it. It doesn't text its friends for advice. The plan is baked in. Damage arrives. The template unfolds. Repair begins. There's a softness to that certainty. You almost want to lean your head on it. You slide your fingers through the water and remember the glow from a few minutes ago. The jellies reset and the stars rebuild share a thread with that blue light. Short, simple actions that add up. Touch, spark, cut, heal. The ocean repeats itself without getting bored. And each time it repeats, something gets a little better. Another arm finished, another polyp lifted adrift, another piece of you unclenched. Downstream in a very different pool, a flatworm the length of your thumbnail glides like a ribbon across glass. Meet a planarian, master of the you can't get rid of me routine. If a planarian gets sliced cleanly, each piece can rebuild an entire animal. Head eye spots, gut the works. It's not a trick, it's a workforce. Inside, a population of stem cells stays ready for anything. They're generalists. They can become whatever is needed, wherever it's needed. A slice has enough of those cells and enough instruction to start over, no questions asked. You can smile here because the quiet sarcasm writes itself. Somewhere, a planarian is living your dream of tossing out a messy week and rebooting from a small, well-rested fragment. But don't press the joke too hard. There's a sincere bomb under it. Life keeps spare keys under the mat. When a window breaks, it doesn't just board it up. It measures, cuts, and replaces the pane, even if the house is the size of your fingernail. The night lays another layer of calm over the rocks. Waves slide up and down with the grace of a sleeping chest. You can feel your own ribs matching that rhythm without trying. And the theme keeps returning, as if the ocean is tapping the same note on a piano. Beginning again is not failure. It's a feature. The jelly rewinds. The star regrows. The worm rebuilds. None of them write inspirational posters about it. They simply do what works. It's easy to sneak your own life into these scenes. A thought pops up, something you wish you could redo, some part of yourself you'd like to reconstruct. The mind is good at that, especially at night. Let it pass like a small cloud. We're not here to design self-improvement plans in the dark. We're here to borrow the feeling these animals radiate, patience with the process. You don't have to take the entire road in one go. You can loop switch when you need to. You can build back an arm slowly, metaphorically speaking, without announcing your timeline to anyone. You lean on your palm and watch a limpet clamp down on stone. The starfish under the ledge doesn't care. It will take the long way around the rock. Time is wider for a creature with no meetings tomorrow. And still, it gets the job done. If you need a permission slip for moving at the speed of healing, take it now. Signed by a star with salt on its skin. The jellyfish's polyp form is quiet company. Picture it. A little living flower anchored to stone, feeding when the current brings food, budding off small medusae when the season cues it. In that form, it's safer. Storms roll over and it hangs on like a well-made hook. When the world calms, it releases new swimmers as if popping tiny umbrellas into the current and saying, "Okay, go try again." That alone can soften a clenched jaw. You're allowed to be rooted for a while. You're allowed to lift when it's time. You shift your weight, and a cool trickle runs over your ankle, a small reminder that your body is mostly water and entirely repair. Even sleep is repair. Your brain will do garbage pickup tonight, moving metabolic leftovers out of the way. Your tissues will patch micro tears. Your immune system will make small lists, check them twice, and call off anything it no longer needs to fight. You aren't the immortal jelly, and you don't need to be. You just need a good night's software update. The planarian's secret, if you want to put it into a bedtime pocket phrase, is keep options open. It doesn't lock cells into roles too early. It leaves a flexible pool, a just-in-case crowd, standing by. You do versions of that too. Habits that work across many days, not just crisis days. Friendships that make you sturdier. Routines that can flex. If gentle sarcasm wants to sneak back in, you can hear it now. Congratulations, you and a worm have the same strategy. But the truth lands softer. Planning for repair is the grown-up version of optimism. You sit on a warm rock and feel your hips settle. In your mind's eye, the starfish finishes its arm like a knitter looping the last stitch. Somewhere inside, cells also know when to stop. That matters. Too much growth, wrong place, wrong time, that's trouble. Nature balances the go signal with a stop signal, a tidy choreography you never see but rely on. It's good to remember that restraint is also part of resilience. Not every wound needs a new limb, so just need rest. A small wave slaps and leaves bubbles that pop one by one, the world's slowest applause. Let it be for the jelly you met, the star under the ledge, the ribbon worm sliding like silk. Let some of it be for you, too, for showing up to rest. The work of repair is not loud. It rarely trends, but it shapes how tomorrow feels when it finds you. Imagine moving through your day with this broadcast humming in the background. It's okay to start again. You miss a step, start again. You snap at someone and regret it, start again. You eat cereal for dinner and call it a plan, start again tomorrow. No drama, no label of failure. Just a soft reset, like the jelly's quiet drop to the rock to bide its time. Your timeline is not a straight beam. It's a braided river, many channels, same direction. Some days you're the main current. Some days you eddy. Both are water doing water things. You ease down until your palm schemes the pool again. Cold traces climb your wrist, and for a second you feel every pore. Then your body says, "We know this," and the sensation folds into calm. That's another repair trick. Exposure without shock, familiarity without boredom. The jelly's reset is dramatic from our perspective. From its perspective, it's familiar, almost routine. The star's regrowth isn't a TED Talk, it's Tuesday. Your sleep doesn't have to be a perfect ritual. It can be simply something you do again tonight and again tomorrow, and it will work often enough to change your life. Above the black line of the horizon, a low cloud tucks itself tighter around the moon. You hear the ocean answer with a slightly different tone, like a change of key in a song you already loved. Nature does that mid-phrase. It doesn't restart the track to switch vibes. It modulates and carries on. So do you. You don't need to announce a new era to feel better. You can shift a half step and keep walking. If your mind tries to sprint ahead to the next marvel, pat it on the head. We'll get there. For now, let the planarian's calm competence fill the space that used to host a list of things you should fix by morning. Nothing gets fixed by morning. Things get given time and oxygen and a few more cycles of blood flow while you drool slightly on a pillow you've finally admitted is your favorite, even though it's not the pretty one. That's the level of wisdom we're dealing with tonight. A tiny crab lifts its half-translucent body and stutters into a crack. The star doesn't chase it. The jelly on the rock does nothing dramatic. The worm scoots off stage like a ribbon drawn by an invisible hand. Everyone is okay with small exits. Everyone is okay with making again what was lost. If you need a sentence to hold as your eyelids tip and recover, let it be, I can start again quietly. No bold fonts, no banners, just an internal nod, a soft action. You step back from the tide pool and the night folds around your calves. The sand takes your foot shape and sighs it away on the next wash. You're in the in-between space where land, sea, and self-formation all blur. That's a cozy place to think about bodies that rewrite themselves, minds that forgive themselves, and the kind of patience you can practice without telling anyone, because nobody needs to know how kind you're being to yourself to feel the results. Your body is already doing the work. That warm heaviness in your thighs, that's a green light from your nervous system. The way your lower back stopped bracing 20 minutes ago and didn't file a complaint, that's a small miracle. There's a whole internal team right now quietly agreeing to take the night shift without making you micromanage them. The jelly knows how to reverse. The star knows how to rebuild. The worm knows how to regenerate. You know how to rest. That's your superpower tonight. Not immortality. Not infinite arms. Just surrender. Let the water noise become background. Let your breath pick a pace and forget who picked it. If a thought returns, what if I can't sleep? Give it a starfish arm and send it off to grow somewhere else. You're not starfish, but you are allowed to detach from worries and let them regenerate in a far, far tide pool where they can't find you. Soft grin. That's the gentle sarcasm. Then the grin fades, and what's left is your face slack in the kindest way. One more look toward the dark water. Somewhere out there, a jelly just restarted. Somewhere under this rock, a star is halfway through a new limb and not rushing it. Somewhere in a lab, a scientist is slicing a planarian like a tiny baguette and watching each piece decide. Okay, brain here, eyes there, with the relaxed poise of a baker folding dough. The world is full of again. You're allowed to join. Turn from the pool and walk slowly back toward the sand line, where the next wonder is waiting. The murmur of roots passing messages underneath your feet, trees feeding trees, flowers sweetening their nectar the moment a bee's wing hum matches the right note. Don't hurry. Carry the jelly's reset, and the stars rebuild with you like smooth stones in your pocket. They make a quiet wait, just enough to remind your hands to stay loose. You're not behind. You're between cycles, like the tide, like the jelly on the rock before it lifts and tries again. You're in the middle of repair. That is finally the whole point of this night. Let it happen without your supervision. Begin again in the easiest possible way, by doing less until less becomes sleep. You leave the tide pools and step into trees, the air changing from salt to leaf and soil, from wave wash to the softest of needles in a breeze you can't quite feel. The path gives under your feet like a mattress, and everything smells faintly alive and a little old in the best way. If the ocean was a city in the dark, this is a cathedral after hours, empty except for you and the quiet humming of things that don't need light to keep working. Your footsteps go quieter without you asking them to. It's not reverence, it's calibration. Forests tune you down. Under your shoes, a network is busy. Picture thread on thread on thread, too fine to see with your naked eye, lacing the soil like a lace shawl. This is fungus, not the headline-grabbing mushroom, but the body beneath, mycelium. Where these threads meet roots, they form little handshake zones, a living plug between plant and fungus. Through those junctions, sugars move one way, minerals the other, water and messages in favor trading going both ways. You don't have to memorize the terms to feel the gist. Trees do not stand alone. The ground between them is less empty space and more whispering hallway. You pause with your palm on a trunk and imagine sap rising, a slow elevator of sweet water climbing toward leaves that mean to spin it on sunlight. The sarcasm in you tries. Are trees holding a group chat? Not exactly, but the vibe isn't wrong. When one tree gets nibbled by insects, it can release quiet chemical signals into the soil and air. Nearby plants smell, the alert, and thicken their leaves or mix up bitter recipes, the botanical version of putting a lock on the cookie jar. The fungus threads act like an encrypted courier service, shuttling signals from root to root in the dark, away from the wind, faster than diffusion alone. One tree's problem becomes a soft, shared awareness. Older trees, big, deep-rooted, the ones that have seen storms and dry spells and maybe lightning, do more than pose for postcards. They sit at the hub of these networks like old radios with great reception. Their roots touch a lot of mycelium. The mycelium touches a lot of roots. When shade makes life tight for a youngster, a sapling thin as your wrist, the older neighbor can slide a little sugar over through the fungal web, like a parent pushing a plate closer when a child is poking at an empty bowl. Nobody writes it down. No tokens change hands. A bit of carbon shifts, and a small tree gets through a lean week. You don't need to litigate the metaphor. It's enough to know that generosity is baked into wood, and none of the donors post about it. Look across the understory and let your eyes relax. Ferns blur into a single green softness. Somewhere a thrush calls once like it's testing the mic, then thinks better of it. The breeze moves a layer at a time, top to bottom, never rushing. If you could peel back the soil like a quilt, you'd see those pale fungal threads reaching for pockets of phosphorus and dragging them back to roots that can't walk. The tree pays in sugar that began as air and sunlight. The fungus pays in minerals dug from tiny rock. Barter, but friendlier. If that makes you want to unclench your own budget for a minute, let that happen. You lean close to a stem and find tiny hairs on a leaf you would have sworn was smooth. Those hairs are gates. A leaf opens microscopic pores during the day to pull in carbon dioxide and let out oxygen and water vapor. It closes them partway when the air gets dry to conserve. The whole thing is quieter than a whisper and faster than you'd think for a giant made of wood. Plants can be prompt without ever hurrying. That alone should be taught in schools. Now tilt your head toward the nearest wildflower, something small with a pale throat and soft petals you almost don't want to breathe on. Imagine a bee coming in low, indifferent to your presence. Wing beats at a frequency the flower can feel. When those specific vibrations brush the petals, the plant doesn't clap. It makes dessert. Within minutes, the nectar gets sweeter. That's not fantasy. The petals act like ears without eardrums, translating sound into tiny shivers that tell a mechanism inside. A pollinator is here. Serve the good stuff. You can smile at the thought that a plant just did targeted customer service, then settle into the relief of it. Life answers in real time, and nobody send a memo. Hold the flowers steady in your mind and back away slowly, like you would from a skittish cat. Buzzes matter out here, not merely as noise, but as cues and coordinates. You don't need to hear the frequencies to feel the system making sense. Humming wings means sugar soon. Sugar soon means pollination now. Pollination now means seeds later. Seeds later mean next spring won't feel empty. The forest is a chain of small promises kept over and over until they become landscape. A patch of gray-green on bark catches your eye, crusty at the edges, soft in the middle like moss that went to art school. Lichen, not one thing, but two holding hands, a fungus for shelter and an alga, or a cyanobacterium, for food. Together they colonize places too harsh for either one alone, from bare rock to high, dry branches where rain arrives like a rumor. The fungus builds the house. The photosynthesizer pays the utilities. It isn't always a gentle marriage. Sometimes the fungus keeps the partnership snug enough to look like control. Still, the result is survival in extremes, color where there would be none, a slow turning of stone into soil. It's the world's quietest construction company, billing in centuries, paid in patience. You trace the lichen's edge with your eyes the way you trace a shoreline on a map. It doesn't ask for praise. It simply stays. Storms peel it, sun bleaches it, it grows back. If resilience needed a logo in a forest, this would be it. Unglamorous, present, necessary. Somewhere under your hand, a dozen tiny creatures are already using it as shelter or food. The forest delegates like a pro. The light dims by one shade, not because clouds darken, but because your pupils have given up on micromanaging. Your body is sliding deeper into the forest's tempo. Long inhale, long exhale, uncrowded attention. It's a good place to mention a math you do in your sleep without knowing. The same sort of math a leaf performs at dusk. During the day, leaves bank sugar as starch. At night, with photosynthesis paused, they spend it. But they don't blow through the account in a panic. They portion it out across the hours until dawn, changing the rate depending on how long the night will be, as if they divide what's in the pantry by the number of plates at the table and the minutes until breakfast. No spreadsheets, just molecules passing like handshakes, so the leaf doesn't starve at 4 a.m. You've done versions of that without calling it math, setting your phone's brightness to just enough, choosing a small blanket so you don't overheat at 2 a.m., deciding to scroll for 5 minutes, and then actually putting the phone down. You're a plant with Wi-Fi. It's okay to take the compliment. Breathe and notice how the forest handles scarcity without drama. Deep roots pull from farther down when the topsoil dries. Leaves tilt to spare themselves the hardest sun. A tree lets some branches go in a bad year rather than lose the trunk. If it gets very rough, seeds wait. Nothing is laziness. Everything is timing. Remember the jelly that reset back at the shore? The forest does its version without leaving its spot. The plan is always, stay if you can, pause if you must, resume when you're able. You're allowed to apply that policy to tomorrow morning. Your hand finds another trunk, this one furred with moss soft enough to be illegal in a showroom. Close your eyes and think about how many connections are weaving under your feet. Each root tip is like a fingernail probing the dark. Each fungus thread is a subway line that ignores traffic and weather. Nutrients, water, small molecules that say watch out or I'm thirsty ride those lines. Not instant, not heroic, but steady. It doesn't matter if a single message is imprecise. The network carries so many that the overall picture forms anyway, like a low-resolution image that becomes recognizable as the pixels fill in. You could lay your ear to the ground for effect. You won't hear words, obviously, but you might hear the fat, gentle noise of the forest version of a heartbeat. A woodpecker 5 trees over, tapping like a metronome. A beetle scritching through duff. Your own pulse in your ear reminding you you're plugged into a network too. That's not poetry. It's plumbing and wires and a lot of stitched-together luck. You didn't have to build it to use it, and you don't have to understand every part to feel held by it. Walk a little and let fallen needles compress under your weight with that tiny plush sigh. Ahead, a sunlit opening reveals a sapling half in shade, half in light, like a kid peeking from behind a curtain. Its leaves on the bright side work overtime. The shaded ones get help through the roots. You don't need to settle the academic debates about whether trees share or trade. For sleep, the important part is practical. The young one doesn't fail today. The network keeps it afloat until the sun shifts, or a branch falls, or a season turns. That should feel like a shoulder drop. You don't have to be your own entire ecosystem. It's okay to lean. A breeze threads the high canopy and sifts down in a slower version, like a translation for the understory. You taste resin, green water, a hint of mushroom. Somewhere behind a log, something small chirps once and decides to call it a night. If you were a flower in this meadow and a bee's buzz matched your favorite frequency, you'd face a quiet choice. Spend more on sweetness now to feed a partner with wings, earn the return later in seeds. You'd say yes in a minute. We don't always manage that kind of trust with each other. Plants do it every summer morning and forget to brag. You think about the leaves' nighttime budgeting and let it remodel your own. You don't have to lie in bed burning through the mental version of your starch. You can set a spend rate that lasts until dawn. Small thoughts, fewer words, no imaginary debates, no sudden research projects about car warranties or the history of doorknobs. If any such topic knocks, tell it the kitchen is closed until morning. The leaf does not get up at midnight to bake a cake for anxiety. It rides out the dark on what it saved and meets the sun with enough left over to make breakfast. Your foot taps a fallen branch that's already halfway to being soil again. Fungi and beetles and bacteria are unwinding it into parts the trees will use later. Nothing goes to waste out here. It just changes format. A log is a bridge for a year, a sculpture for a few more, a sponge a while after that, and finally a layer in which a seed will try its first brave split. If you ever feel like you are between formats yourself, a little shapeless, a little unfinished, congratulations. You're on schedule. You remember the ocean's glow and the whale's low notes, and how both were messages sent without fuss. The forest is doing the same, underground instead of underwater. Threads where we expected emptiness. Messages where we assumed silence. Help where we thought there was only competition. It doesn't matter if you call it intelligence or chemistry. Your nervous system hears the same thing. You are allowed to be connected. Before you leave the trees to wander on, listen for one last quiet lesson. The big ones don't rush to grow bigger at night. They maintain, they repair, they budget, they wait. Waiting is not nothing. It's the scaffold of everything. Somewhere a flower just got sweeter because a bee's wing beat said hello. Somewhere a lichen on a stone is making the future's soil one invisible layer at a time. Somewhere beneath your heel, sugar moved, and a small tree was saved from a small bad day. Step back onto the path and carry the hush with you. Your hands feel heavier in a good way. Your jaw remembers how to hang rather than clench. If a stray thought asks whether all this root talk is too much, let your inner sarcasm shrug. Sure, trees aren't texting, but if they were, the thread would read, "Got you, same, here if you need." Then let even that joke dissolve, replaced by the simpler comfort. The ground is busy on your behalf. Ahead, the trail lifts toward a clearing where tiny invincibles wait. Seeds asleep for years, tardigrades curled into patience, microbes thriving in places you wouldn't put your hand. The pattern holds. Pause, endure, begin again. You don't need to chase it. Keep walking at the speed of the forest, which is to say, slow enough to hear connections you can't see and steady enough to make your own. You step from the hush of trees into a small clearing where the ground looks ordinary until you imagine it at the scale of a raindrop. Shrink in your mind. Kneel, then kneel again, until a bit of moss becomes a forest of pillars, and a bead of water becomes a lake with beaches your eyelashes could rake. Somewhere in this miniature world lives a creature with 8 tiny legs and the temperament of a very patient bouncer. It looks like a wrinkled, gummy bear the size of a comma. Congratulations, you have met a tardigrade, also known as a water bear, tiny royalty in the kingdom of not impressed. If the puddle dries, the water bear does not compose a dramatic goodbye post. It follows a script older than your bones. It folds in on itself, tucks its little legs, and enters a state that is not sleep and not death, a pause called cryptobiosis. In that curled ton, its metabolism drops to a whisper. Water leaves its cells. Sugars and proteins settle into a glassy protection. Time narrows to a thread and stretches. The tardigrade can wait like that for months, years, maybe longer, indifferent to drought and frost, to radiation and vacuum, to temperatures that would make your kettle proud and your freezer complain. Then a mist returns, a dew forms, the first molecules touch its skin, and the bear wakes. Legs unfurl. Mouth opens. Back to grazing on algae as if it merely blinked. You stay small in your mind and watch how calm competence looks when it wears a squishy suit. Someone once put tardigrades on a satellite and sent them into space for a brief, rude vacation. Some of them came home and shrugged, in a microscopic way only a tardigrade can shrug. Your gentle sarcasm wants to label them indestructible. They're not. They can be crushed or burned or eaten. But their trick is mercifully simple. When the world gets ugly, stop burning fuel. Protect the essentials. Wait. Wake up when the rain returns. You stand at your full height again and think about the same strategy hiding in plain sight all over this clearing. Seeds by the thousands lie under your shoes like tiny time capsules, hard shells with doorbells that ring only for the right weather. A seed is a blueprint wrapped around a snack, stubbornly optimistic. Some wait a season, some wait lifetimes. Archaeologists found a date palm seed in an ancient jar, centuries old, maybe 2 millennia, and when someone finally gave it water and warmth, it reached up like it had merely overslept. Not every seed is that patient, but the point lands gently. Life writes its own delays into the plan. Run your thumb over a dry seed and feel how the coat scuffs like wax. That shell is not apathy. It's intelligence you could put in your pocket. Seeds are cautious investors. They tally light, temperature swings, moisture, even smoke from a faraway fire. Only when signals align do they unlock. Too soon, and you die in a cold snap. Too late, and a bird carries your future away. The plant's answer is neither panic nor bravado. It's math without numbers, chemistry with gut instinct. And once the moment arrives, the seed doesn't hold a press conference. It splits quietly, spills a root downward, a shoot upward, and lets the sun do the shouting for it. You step toward a geothermal breath in the distance, a shimmer that bends the air as if heat is trying to draw its own picture. Here the ground goes mineral and bright, crusted in lemons and limes of sulfur, streaked in iron red, steam rising in slow exhale. You wouldn't put your hand in these pools. Please don't. They can be hot enough to cook and acidic enough to scribble holes in shoes. And yet, on the edges and in the outflow, microbes thrive, little heat-loving, acid-loving citizens who find a way to eat where you wouldn't dare to picnic. These are extremophiles, which is just a polite way to say, your idea of normal is adorable. Some strip energy from sulfur, from iron, from the chemical gradients whispering through the water. They don't need sunlight directly. They dine on chemistry, turning hostile corners into home kitchens. The phrase, boiling acid, sounds like a villain's bathtub, but to them it's Tuesday, and they are very good at Tuesdays. Their proteins have bracing and locks you don't. Their membranes were clothing your cells would never choose, and still, they're just doing metabolism with a personality. It's hard to feel alone in a world where even poison is someone's soup. Steam beads your hairline, and then disappears as a breeze combs the clearing. You remember the ocean plankton that made their own light and the leaves that did their nighttime budgeting, and you add this. Even in places that look like endings, something opens a shop. If your mind tries to hustle toward the practical application, could we use these microbes to fix? Tell it, sure, in the morning, after coffee. Tonight you're collecting a mood, not a business plan. The mood is patience plus weirdness equals survival. A shadow crosses a sunlit patch of leaf litter, and your attention follows it to an ant walking like it has an appointment. The ant climbs a blade of grass, stops, adjusts, and clamps down. You know this story in its horror movie version, the zombie ant drama. And that word feels like a cheap jump scare in a place where we're trying to bring the heart rate down. So soften it. Imagine a fungus whose life depends on timing and height. Spores must reach a new host, and the best way to do that is to nudge the current host's behavior so it carries you high and still. The fungus weaves through the ant's body, steering with chemicals, whispering into the ant's inner wiring. Climb now, bite now, stay. It's precise. It's eerie. It's also a strategy honed by too many afternoons to number. If your shoulders tense, let them sink again. The forest we visited already taught you that control and cooperation are two faces of the same planet. This is control. It's not kind. But even here, there's a kind of economy, a balance. The fungus is laser-focused on its own continuation. The colony adapts. The forest remains unbearably itself. We don't have to enjoy this to learn from it. One lesson is as calm as a truism. Small signals can steer big outcomes. Another is the one your nervous system loves at bedtime. You are not an ant on a blade. You are a human in a safe room, allowed to watch without being in the story. The ant's jaw holds. The fungus will complete its cycle, and new spores will drift like the lightest snow. Somewhere else, a beetle steps over a sleeping seed. Somewhere almost invisible, a tardigrade curls tighter. You step back from all of it, a listener at the door of 1,000 apartments, hearing fragments of lives through walls you're not meant to open. You think about waiting as a skill, not a punishment. The seeds, not yet. The tardigrades, pause. The microbes, I'll take mine hot. The funguses, now. All of them are choices coded into bodies that have no words. You have words, which makes waiting messy, but also lets you say a sentence that feels like a blanket. I can set this down until morning. If a stray thought tries to turn that into a dare, what if you forget? Remember the planarian's lesson from the tide pools. You can begin again. Seeds do. Tardigrades do. You can misplace a thought and find it again later in better light. Your breath has fallen into that long, even pattern where you exhale as if the air weighs more on the way out. The fan hum, the memory of waves, the in-the-bones quiet of the forest. Everything stacks to make a bed you can carry while walking. You don't need pillows. You just need the next small picture. A glass vial in a drawer with old seeds that look like pepper. A scientist wakes, waters them, waits. A week later, green threads lift like tiny flags. You can see the fingers that plant them trembling a little, not from caffeine, but from permission to hope. That's what seeds hand out for free, a steady drip of excuse to expect good things. Nearby, where the steaming water thins into a creek, a film of colorful microbes paints ripples like stained glass. Colors aren't a fashion choice here. They're tools. Pigments can shield, can capture energy, can survive insult. It's easy to call this alien, but the longer you watch, the more it feels domestic, like a kitchen turned inside out. Heat is a stove. Minerals are spices. The menu isn't yours, but the hunger is the same. Stay alive and make more of yourself. Even the tardigrade, who specializes in waiting, eats with ordinary enthusiasm once the water comes back. There's a comfort in that return to simple needs after a complicated trick. Pause, then breakfast. Your mind returns for a moment to the fungus guiding the ant, and you notice how your own body uses chemicals to nudge behavior. You release sleep hormones in the dark, wakefulness ones with the light. Food cues your gut to slow or speed. You can call that manipulation if you want to make your inner narrator dramatic, or you can call it coordination and let your jaw relax as you do. Tonight, you're letting your own chemistry steer you, on purpose, towards soft things. You set the room. You choose the story. You pick the slowest lane without signage, and it leads exactly where it always leads, toward heavy lids and dropped shoulders and a small smile at nothing in particular. Somewhere under your feet, a seed coat splits with a sound so quiet it doesn't exist to ears. A root tip finds a seam. Water follows. The plant doesn't ask for a guarantee. It was built to move toward enough, not perfect. Every extremophile by the steaming pool followed the same rule and simply shifted what enough meant. For one, its pH low and heat high. For another, its salt like a brine barrel. For another, its pressure that would turn you into a forgettable story. Enough is custom-made. Your version tonight is one pillow, one blanket, one low lamp, and a voice walking you past tiny legends until you forget you were listening. Imagine tucking a tardigrade into the corner of your mind like a mascot. When the day dries you out, you don't have to make a speech. You curl a little, you do less, you keep the essentials safe. When the rain comes back, because it always does in some form, you unfurl. Not dramatic, not a billboard on the highway of your life. Just you, quietly returning to motion. The clearing settles. Steam thins. Shadows lengthen toward the first hint of the next place. Your nervous system has learned a few new lullabies. The pause that preserves, the seed that waits, the hunger that rewrites recipes to fit the kitchen it finds, the whisper that steers a small body without scaring it. You're not taking a test on this. There is no quiz, only the gift of a body that listens when you whisper back. You turn from the hot edge and back toward the cool green, carrying with you a pocket's worth of tiny invincibles. The path ahead will lead you deeper into time, toward the day when oxygen was considered rude, when microbes built the first layered monuments and the planet's breath found its rhythm. But you don't march. You drift, the way a seed drifts until it knows the ground. If the ground tonight Is your bed perfect? If it's the couch, fine. If it's the train seat you'll forget as soon as you stand, also allowed. One more look, just for the quiet joy of it. A speck-sized bear releases its grip on itself and strolls between grains of sand like a confident astronaut. A seed decides the night is long enough, and a hair-thin root writes the first sentence of a long letter to the sun. A ribbon of microbes and hot, sour water conduct their chemistry the way choir members hum the note before the song. Steady, tuned, ready. And in a nearby glade, an ant that climbed and clamped becomes a platform. Then a story, then a reminder that life strategies cover the full range from tender to fierce. Turn your face to the path and let your breath cue the next step. In the same way, a mist cues a water bear to uncurl. We're going to slip backward a little to a time when the air itself was a plot twist and the rocks held records of the first engineers. No rush. The tiny ones have shown you the trick. When it's time, you'll know. For now, you are enough. Closed eyes, heavy limbs, a slow yes to the ground you're lying on. The night will hold the rest. You follow the path backward in time, the way you might scroll to the top of a long conversation, and the words get older, stranger, slower. The world is ocean and rock. No bird song, no leaves, just a shore that hasn't learned green yet. The tide goes in and out because tides are older than almost everything you love. The water is busy, though. Along the edges, where waves go thin as glass, soft carpets of cells spread and hold. Layer on layer, they trap silt, glue grains, and stitch sunlight into sugar. They build by accident, really work the day, sleep the night, repeat, and the structure rises, ripples, domes, low mounts. You're looking at stromatolites, stone made from the slow teamwork of microbes. They don't pose for photos. They don't care who's watching. They're the quiet engineers that started putting Earth in order long before anyone asked for blue sky. The workers in that carpet are tiny but stubborn. You've met their modern cousins, cyanobacteria, sun-eaters that look like nothing but run a chemistry empire. They pull carbon dioxide from the water and split it with sunshine. They spin the carbon. The waste to them is oxygen. At first, it doesn't go far. It reacts with whatever it touches. Iron in the water grabs it and rusts, sinking as red snow. Picture the sea blushing, then freckling, then laying down bands of iron that will later become mountains striped in memory. Those stripes are the receipts. Oxygen happened here. For a long time, oxygen is just a rumor, erased as fast as it appears. The rocks drink it. The oceans drink it. The planet learns the taste, and only after the big sinks are full does oxygen slip free into the air. The moment doesn't feel like a switch. It feels like a slow flood that finally finds the door. And for most of the organisms alive then, that flood is a disaster. Early life is built for a world without oxygen. Oxygen is reactive. It scrapes electrons like a thief with a crowbar. It tears apart ancient metabolisms that ran just fine in the old soup. Imagine living your peaceful, oxygen-free life, and suddenly the atmosphere is basically bleach. Not fun. Many lineages end quietly. Others dig inward, down into muds and vents where the new sky can't reach. Survival becomes a matter of depth. You and I can steward a little sarcasm for the plot twist. The air you love, the air you just sighed with, was once the toxic spill nobody ordered. The planet kept it anyway. And then, as always, something adapted. A few lineages learned to use oxygen not as burn, but as battery, to harness its hunger for electrons into a richer form of respiration. With that extra energy, cells could afford luxuries, bigger bodies, internal compartments, more complicated jobs. Eventually, a cell swallowed another cell that could handle oxygen really well and didn't digest it. Housemate turned organelle. That partnership, one cell living inside another, helping run the power, made the paycheck bigger. There's your rent control department that led to cities. You sit on a warm rock and let that sink in. The humble carpets that built stone mounds changed the sky. The sky changed the rules. Life lost a lot. Life learned. In the quiet math of extinction and survival, oxygen handed out both evictions and promotions. Somewhere, cyanobacteria kept layering the mats, wave after wave, while new oxygen users sprouted traits that would one day become muscle, nerve, eye. It took a very long time. Good news for your bedtime. Nothing about this story is in a hurry. If you want to see those first builders now, you still can. In places like calm bays with salty, shallow water, living stromatolites rise like low biscuits, their surfaces slick with microbial film. They're museums that breathe. Run a finger along one, gently, and only where you're allowed, and you'd feel time and the thinness, the soft slip of life gluing sand into history. The same chemistry that once rusted the seas is still humming on a sunny afternoon, perfectly content to ignore you. Think of the carbon moving in that ancient world the way we pictured it moving in you. In, out, stored, released. Volcanic breaths push carbon dioxide into air and ocean. Weather and rock pull it back out. As mountains wear down and rivers carry dissolved minerals to the sea where shells and skeletons lock carbon into stone. The planet runs a slow inhale and exhale across geologic ages. Plants, much later, will put a lively rhythm on top of that baseline. Tonight, you can sit on a long beat and listen. You are breathing fast music over a very slow drum. Picture a shoreline in that oxygen-shifting world. When the tide drops, mats bake, then recover in the next spill of water. When storms rip pieces free, they reattach and start again, satisfied to be as before. This is the same patience you watched in seeds and tardigrades. No speeches, no medals, just tolerance and retry. The atmosphere slowly brightens its oxygen share. A thin shield forms up high. Ozone, a bodyguard against the harshest ultraviolet. The surface becomes less punishing, inch by inch, for creatures considering a little risk. It's not that the planet wanted forests and foxes and fans and bedtime videos. It's that the chemistry finally permitted them. You let a handful of sand run through your fingers and imagine iron in ancient seas, seizing oxygen the second it appears, dropping to the bottom in red layers. Geologists name those layers-banded iron formations and get excited when they find them because every stripe is a timestamp. The rock is honest. Step by step, oxygen's story is written in rust. One day you might stand at a road cut and see those red-black bars and remember this quiet moment. And maybe you'll laugh because your softest night included a love letter to oxidation. When the sinks are full and oxygen stops disappearing into rock immediately, it accumulates where you can use it, in the air. The first animals to float in that sky are not us. They are small-shelled drifters, jelly forms, simple grazers. But the new engine, oxygen-powered respiration, allows for new experiments. Those experiments take millions of years and end with things like muscle that can pull hard, nerves that can signal fast, and eventually brains that can whisper in the dark. You don't owe oxygen a thank you card. It would be like thanking a faucet for water when an entire river system made the gift. Still, you're allowed to feel a fondness for the gas that turned low-energy days into high-energy possibilities. Back in the present, your chest lifts and falls. Somewhere in you, oxygen slips from alveoli into blood, binds to iron in red cells, rides a current, lets go where it's needed, and returns as carbon dioxide for the trip out. You're doing the same chemistry the cyanobacteria set in motion, just flipped. They take in carbon dioxide and let out oxygen. You take in oxygen and let out carbon dioxide. The exchange is not just metaphor. It's logistics. You and those mats are halves of a polite transaction conducted without invoices across billions of years. The planet's big carbon breath steadies the climate over spans too wide to feel at night. Rocks draw down carbon dioxide as rain breaks them, as rivers carry fragments to the sea, as shells sink, as continents raft. Volcanoes burp carbon back up in pulses loud and small. Forests and algae ride the seasons, pull the daily sawtooth line up and down. Every so often, the balance tips hard and frozen times come, or warm times sweep farther north. Living things adjust if they can, migrate if they must, and sometimes don't make it. The iron stripes and the shapes in the rocks keep the books on all of it. It's a lot to hold in your head. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to be soothed by scale. The problems that woke you at 3 a.m. are tiny next to a planet learning to breathe. For a whisper of dark humor, oxygen is both healer and hazard even now. It powers your life and slowly oxidizes your outsides. Apples brown, nails rust, skin learns the alphabet of time. We love it. It wears us. There's no contradiction there. Its drift and balance, the same way the ocean's glow, was both welcome and warning, both invitation and do not eat me. Reality likes two things at once. Your brain can hold that and still tilt towards sleep. You glance toward the horizon of this ancient beach and imagine how the first long chains of cells might have stitched themselves into tissues, then organs, then bodies that could do two tasks at once: move and sense. More oxygen, more energy, more options. A slow cascade toward complexity, not because complexity is better in any moral way, but because energy budgets allowed it. When budgets are poor, you keep it simple. When they expand, you try new features and keep the ones that don't kill you. That's as true for phones as it was for fish. You've upgraded your species through a million A/B tests you never saw. Somewhere under shallow, sunlit water, carbonate starts to pile up in more deliberate ways. Tiny animals with stinging tentacles trap sand. Glue it with stone, they make themselves, and the first rough reefs appear. The theme returns. Small architects, big results. You can feel the story bending toward the next stop. Cities of coral raised one polyp at a time. Moonlit spawnings that look like underwater snow. Whole neighborhoods of life, depending on a slow calcium rain. The ocean is clearing its workbench. Before you go, pause with the stromatolite one last time. Touching your mind the way you touch the lichen on bark. Consider that your next breath carries the legacy of these mats. They altered the sky in a move that nearly ended everything, and still, here you are listening to a fan, eyes heavy, bones made of star calcium, blood moving iron the color of ancient seas. When you breathe out, some of that carbon will find a leaf. When that leaf drops, a microbe will find it. When enough find enough, rock will remember them. You're made of such loops. No heroics needed. If your thoughts try to telescope outward to the imbalance we're adding now with our machines, to the graphs that climb, acknowledge the thought and let it set itself gently on the shelf. You do care. You can act in daylight. Tonight is for letting your nervous system befriend the long view, so your day brain doesn't feel alone in the morning. The carbon cycle is not your enemy. It is the breath that can include your steady steps. The light on the water shifts, and you can almost see time picking up speed, from mats to mussels, from rusted oceans to clear blue shallows humming with small builders. The reef rises in your inner distance, and with it 1,000 colors you won't see while you're asleep, but your memory knows them anyway. Tiny architects are waiting. The moon will keep the schedule. The sea cucumbers will flex between firm and soft like living stress balls. Decorator crabs will design outfits that would win reality shows if reality shows had better taste. Plankton will drift like stars, and the reef will be a city that never learned the word board. Stand, if only in your mind, and wipe your sandy hands on your thighs. The air you're breathing is a miracle that began as a mistake. The planet's breath is slow and patient enough to hold you. Your own breath is small and fast enough to lull you. That's a good sandwich to be inside. We'll step forward now, toward the builders who sculpt with stone and schedule their love to the moon, because of course they do. You won't have to swim far. You won't have to do anything at all, really. The ocean will bring the city to you the way sleep brings the softest parts of science. On a tide, you don't have to name. You wade from the old shoreline into water that turns warm and bright around your knees, and a city rises without a skyline. No glass, no steel, but towers anyway. Ridges and ledges and lacework streets pieced together by millions of tiny workers. Each building is a colony, and each architect is small enough to sit on your fingertip with room to spare. They are animals, coral polyps, little mouths with a ring of stinging tentacles and a habit of laying stone. Night after night, year after patient year, they pull dissolved minerals from seawater and lay down a thin layer of calcium carbonate, a stony skeleton that will outlast them. When a polyp dies, its likeness remains as a room in the growing complex. New polyps take the upstairs apartment and keep building. The city thickens. Fish move in. Crabs take the alleys. The water learns to fold around this place like fabric over sculpture. Lean closer in your mind and meet a single polyp at work. It's soft and translucent, a tiny anemone tucked into a limestone thimble. When the day is calm and bright, it keeps a roommate, microscopic algae in its tissues, quiet sun harvesters that trade sugar for shelter. The neighbors help keep the lights on in a very literal way. The polyp shares its space. The algae pay the rent in photosynthetic currency. The skeleton grows another whisper thicker. This is not romance. It's a long-standing lease with benefits, and it runs on clear water, steady sun, and the sort of patience your phone can't imagine. You float above a ledge and watch the traffic. Parrotfish rasp across coral with beak-bright mouths, grinding algae from the surface, tidying the block, and paying rent in a different currency, sand. Yes, the powder that makes perfect beaches often begins in the belly of a grazing fish. Surgeonfish brows in cautious lines, blue and yellow like paint dabs. A shy octopus pretends to be a clump of rock, then can't resist changing its mind and becoming a patch of rippled sand. A turtle passes with a face that looks perpetually wise, and maybe it is, but it mostly wants a salad. Everything here eats, is eaten, hides, displays, rests, repeats. The city hums. There's a calendar in the water that skyscrapers don't follow, the moon's slow clock. On certain warm nights after a full moon, as the tide softens and the sea turns to silk, the city keeps an appointment. One polyp lifts a tiny bundle to the surface of its mouth and lets go. Then another. Then 1,000. Then the entire wall around you blurs with rising flecks, pale, pink, cream, egg sperm packets buoyed with a bit of fat, so they drift upward together. It looks like someone shook a snow globe in slow motion. The surface becomes a star-field scene from below, scattered with future possibilities. Spawning is synchronized, so the odds are decent in a big ocean. A storm of life increases the chance that some will meet their match and begin again as drifting larvae. The moon didn't write a memo, but its light, its gravity, and the quiet pulse of the season told everyone the same thing. Tonight. You don't have to memorize the phase or the water's exact temperature. You only need the soft idea that the reef keeps time with a shared metronome, and the song is older than our calendars. After the snow of spawn, the city goes back to its shores. Cleaners get to work. Night fish switch with day fish, polite but firm. Eels unspool from caves like ribbons pulled from a sleeve. Corals extend their tentacles to feed on the plankton that drifted in to see the show. Plankton shape more than the menu here. The tiniest drifters, plant-like ones that love sun and the ones that graze on them, set the tone of the water. They turn sunlight into sugars, release oxygen, and hand off that energy up the chain until it reaches jaws and fins, and, through a long series of generous mouths, a whale somewhere offshore. Every night, zooplankton in the open ocean rise toward the surface to feed, then sink back with dawn in what might be the largest commute on Earth, a vertical migration that moves more life than any rush hour. The reef lives on that tide of small things, a steady income of calories from the blue beyond. If waves are the sea's breath, plankton are the pulse that rides the breath, steady, insistent, ignored only by the bored and the already full. Down along the sand at the reef's foot lies a creature that looks like a blunt cucumber someone dropped and forgot. Pick it up and it will remind you not to with a very calm magic trick. Sea cucumbers can change their firmness in seconds. Their tissues are built with a smart mesh of proteins that can lock into stiffness or slide into softness on demand. If a crevice calls, they loosen and pour themselves into it like pudding. If a predator presses, they firm to a rubber log. Some species play an even stranger card, ejecting part of their insides as sticky threads to distract attackers, then slowly regrowing what they tossed away. There's a gentle sarcasm in the move. Here, hold this. But it's effective. Meanwhile, as they feed, sea cucumbers take in sand and organic crumbs, process the edible bits, and return the sediment cleaner, like slow vacuum cleaners keeping the city's floors unclogged. Their work stirs nutrients back into the water, helps keep pH balanced at the seafloor, and maintains the softness of places where new coral babies would like to settle. Janitors with superpowers. Ease your gaze along a ledge, and you'll notice a small crab decorated like a street parade float. It didn't wake up that fancy. Decorator crabs curate their outfits, plucking algae, seaweed, and living sponges to attach to hooked hairs on their shells. The result is camouflage that grows with them, hides them from hungry eyes, and, in the case of certain sponges, lends a whiff of chemical defense. You're watching a moving garden. As the crab molts and upgrades its armor, it carefully reattaches the best pieces, like someone rebuilding a favorite outfit after laundry day. The style is function. The runway is survival. The audience is everyone with a mouth. You think about the forest mycelium for a second, those underground threads handing off nutrients and messages, and you feel the rhyme. Here, structure is the network. The coral skeleton changes how water moves, slows currents enough to drop food where mouths can reach it, carves out pockets of safety, and builds goalposts for games you'll never see. The city is not just address and shelter. It's signal too, a shape that says to a larval fish, stay. There are places to hide. There are things to eat. The architecture itself is language, spoken in holes and overhangs and little plazas tucked out of the surge. The colors in your mind go bright, then brighter. Purples and electric blues, test pattern yellows, the kind of oranges painters argue about under different lights. Some of that is pigment. Some is physics, microscopic surfaces bending and scattering light in ways that make blue where no blue dye exists. Structural color again, like the peacock feathers and morpho butterflies you'll pass later in a different dream. The reef doesn't care how it's making the show. It cares that its inhabitants can read the cues. This stripe means don't eat me, that it means I'm watching you. That flash means follow me if you want a chance at dinner. Try not to move too fast here. The reef rewards loitering. A patch that looked empty a moment ago will produce a blenny face from a hole the width of a pencil eraser. Eyes like buttons, expression of constant mild alarm. A cleaner wrasse offers a spa day to a grouper, slipping between sharp teeth to pick parasites in a social contract built on restraint. Everybody stays civil. Everybody leaves healthier. A brittle star drapes itself like a living tassel and then distills into the shadows when a fish glides too close. Everything is busier than you realized once you stop wanting spectacle and accept texture. If your mind tries to sprint back to the moonlit spawn and ask, but how do they all know? Just let the question sit by your ankle like a piece of driftwood. Moonlight, tide, temperature, currents, chemicals, tiny clocks, and big ones keep time together. No PA system, no calendar app, just a chorus following the same conductor's hand, and the hand is gravity and glow and warmth, all the way up to the face you looked at as a kid and called the man in the moon. The reef looks up too, in its way, and counts without numbers. You remember the glowing bays from earlier, the plankton lighting your fingers like sparks, and you see their cousins here in daylight, working invisibly, turning light into sugar, hinting oxygen into water, feeding mouths you can't see until you look right at them. Everything has a cousin here. The forest's lichen partnership, fungus and photosynthesizer, finds an echo in coral and its sun-loving roommates. The sea cucumbers soften, then firm, echoes the way your own muscles release as you breathe out, then gently gather as you shift to get comfortable. The decorator crab's wardrobe feels like a city pigeon wearing the colors of your coat, because dust is democratic. Even your slow heart matches the reef's easy schedule. Nothing urgent unless a barracuda passes through, which it won't tonight. Let your attention drift to sound. Reefs aren't silent. If you could put your ear against the water, you'd hear a crackle like a campfire. Much of it comes from tiny snapping shrimp clicking loud enough to startle small fish, addled little percussionists who fill the water with pops. Fish drum with muscles against their swim bladders. The whole place murmurs. Larvae out in the blue actually listen for this noise and swim toward it when they're ready to settle, choosing a home by sound the way you might choose a cafe by the buzz through the door. The city markets itself honestly. Live here, there's chatter. You allow your inner sarcasm a friendly nudge. It's real estate, but no one's scamming anyone. Then let even that drift away. The practical part of your brain can take a nap with the angelfish under the ledge. What you keep is the ease of a place that runs on reciprocity. Polyps building stone so communities can exist. Algae paying sugar rent to live inside animals. Fish trading cleaning services for a nibble. Cucumbers recycling the floor. Crabs turning their backs into traveling gardens. Plankton climbing and sinking by starlight, because that's what works. The reef is not a miracle. It's a million reasonable deals that add up to beauty. If you're tempted to worry about fragility, heat, acid, storms, notice the thought, nod once, and tuck it under a shell for morning. Caring is allowed. Fixing is for daylight. Tonight, you're here to learn the reef's core lesson at a pace your muscles can accept. Steady additions make strong places. One thin layer of stone at a time becomes a cliff. One small good habit at a time becomes a life you recognize. Watch as sunlight flickers over a coral head and makes the shadows wriggle. That's the sea painting for free. The city waves hello in the only way a city knows how, by letting the day move across it and staying. You breathe out, and the bubble you didn't realize you were holding swerves and goes up like a thought changed at the last second. Very on brand for you. The bubble joins the others, and the surface folds it in without a ripple. Also on brand for the ocean. In the corner of your eye, a slow, velvety shape lifts and flutters. An enormous manta ray, maybe the sort of animal that makes you think about angels until you remember angels are supposed to be loud. And this is the quietest thing you've ever seen move. It glides the edge of the city, then slides back into the blue like a page turning itself. The city hardly notices. It has work to do: grow, spawn, feed, be fed, clean, repair, repeat, year after unhurried year. Let your breath match that repetition. In, out. A small pulse in your temple keeps time with a shrimp's chatter, with a parrotfish bite, with the moonlit release of a million pinhead pearls. Your shoulders are heavy in the way rocks are heavy under shallow water, pressed but supported by everything around them. If sleep were a place, it would be a ledge like this when the surge is gentle. You could stay here all night, but the path ahead is opening again, not out to sea, but back toward animals whose minds you will recognize in flashes, voices that call each other by name, faces that remember yours, birds that solve puzzles with quiet pride, bees that understand nothing and something at the same time, like you do when you finally stop trying. The reef taught you about cities built on tiny agreements. The next stretch will show you the citizens who negotiate with ideas. Take one last slow look at the water-boiled lace of the coral. The moon is somewhere above, keeping its slow calendar whether you're awake to watch the snow spawn or not. A crab adjusts its hat. A sea cucumber flows from firm to soft and back again, unbothered by your attention. Plankton hitch their daily elevator to the surface, dine, and ride back down. You turn away with your pockets full of simple truths. Build thin layers, trust slow schedules. Let the moon keep time, decorate if it helps, soften when you must, firm when you need, clean as you go, and don't be shy about borrowing light from someone who has more. The sand warms your feet as you step toward the shallows, and the city continues behind you without noticing the loss of one sleepy tourist. That's the best part. It doesn't need you to be magnificent. It already is. Your only job is to carry the feeling, a tide you didn't make, rising anyway, lifting you a little higher than worry, laying you down just right when the current turns. You leave the coral city with the moon at your back and wade into quieter water, the kind that holds sound the way warm hands hold a cup. A shape rises beside you, smooth as a breath, then slips under again. When it returns, you see the curve of a dolphin's back, the small exhale that writes a silver question mark at the surface, and you feel something simple and clear. This isn't just a body moving through water. It's a mind noticing you. Dolphins don't swap business cards. They trade whistles. Each one develops a signature call early in life, a little acoustic name that other dolphins learn and keep. Out in the blue, where you and I would get lost in minutes, a dolphin calls with that sound, and a specific animal answers. Researchers once played recordings of signature whistles. The dolphins turned toward their own, like a person turning at their name in a crowded station. You can picture the scene without any lab coat in sight. A pod spreads across a dim valley of water, the distance too wide for eyes, so they keep in touch with voices. I'm here. A beat. I hear you. The tone isn't human. The warmth is. There's a kind of wry comfort in knowing that a creature who could ignore you chooses not to. Dolphins have their own errands, hunting lines, calf lessons, social politics we only half understand, and yet they pause to look, to circle, to add you briefly to their mental map. If you've ever whispered your name in your head to hear how it feels, imagine carrying a whistle shaped like you, and a friend a mile away remembering it perfectly. That's the level of attention you're floating in. You don't need to speak back. Your job is to soften and listen for the rhythm inside the water, the way you listen for the forest hush. You step ashore and the sound changes from liquid to dust and grass. The path opens onto a savanna under slow light, and far ahead a small group of elephants moves like deliberate clouds. Their feet barely crush the grass. They don't hurry. When they reach a scatter of pale arcs on the ground, old bones, smoothed by sun, the group slows more. Trunks reach, not for food, but for the curves of skull and rib. It's not a tourist trick. It happens when no one is watching. They touch, linger, and sometimes return to the same remains years later, as if keeping an appointment with memory. We're careful with our words here. Grief in elephants doesn't need us to pin it down like a specimen. It's enough to say they notice they're dead and behave differently around them. Quiet, focused, unwilling to rush. A mother stands longer. A calf tucks close. They've been seen guarding the living who are about to go, refusing to leave. If you've ever paused at a neighbor's old jacket on a fence and felt something catch in your throat, that's the tiny human echo of this large animal habit. Attention that doesn't profit anyone, except that it knits a life together, stitch by stitch. The air is warm. Your breath is steady. You tuck that elephant scene into the same pocket as the coral moon snow, another example of lives sinking without a central speaker. Then, as the grassland turns to a messy edge of trees and rooftops, a different mind arrives, black-feathered and bright-eyed, already inventorying your face. A crow lands on a railing and watches you with the vibe of a clever neighbor who knows which house has good snacks. Crows make tools in the wild, twigs bent into hooks to fish grubs from crevices, leaves torn into exact shapes for poking and prying. In experiments, they keep a tool to use later. They'll choose a dull treat now for a better one later if the exchange is honest. That's not impulse, that's planning. They hide food and move it if they think someone's watching, like a magician palming a coin when the audience blinks. They even remember faces. If you bother a crow, it can hold a grudge, and it might tell its friends, who will greet you with an appropriate amount of side-eye for years. If you help, they remember that, too. You are more interesting to a crow than you realize, which is either endearing or slightly terrifying, depending on your breakfast choices. You hold still for the bird, and it tips its head, calculating. There's a little satisfaction in being seen by something that has a busy mind of its own. The crow fluffs, calls once, a sound like a soft click, and lifts away to a roofline where another crow waits. You don't need to assign a narrative. It's enough to accept that you just walked through someone else's thought. A bright room opens in your memory, stocked with gentle consonants and tiny beads. A parrot perches on a stand, an African gray with eyes the color of rain, looking like it's halfway bored and halfway amused. This family is famous for more than mimicry. One particular parrot learned to identify colors, shapes, and quantities, could answer how many with the right number, could learn same and different, and use those concepts on objects it hadn't seen before. It even picked up the idea of zero as none, the empty set that bends human brains on bad days. It wasn't doing calculus. It was doing something sometimes more impressive, generalizing quietly, showing that a different kind of brain can hold a concept and move it around. Parrots also ask in their own way. Want grape? Want to go back? No, that last one lands heavy and funny. Hearing a small voice say no without whining, just a neat refusal from a feathered person you thought was a soundboard, rearranges your sense of the room. You don't need a lab citation to let the feelings sink in. Intelligence is not a single ladder. It's a landscape. Your crow on a roof is on one hill. The parrot is on another. You're somewhere in between, sometimes looking competent, sometimes losing your keys while they're in your hand. A softer buzz enters, and your attention slides from large and loud to small and busy. A bee lands on a tiny platform and looks like she's doing nothing. In fact, the little brain behind those eyes is doing what your day brain did earlier when it decided that 2 slices of toast are less than 3, and 0 is less than all of it. In careful tests, bees trained on fewer shapes equals a reward treated a blank card as fewer than 1. None is less than some. That's a leap. Brains this small shouldn't juggle such an idea. And yet here she is, choosing emptiness correctly because the rule makes sense to her. Bees also learn by watching. In one lovely, ridiculous experiment, some bees rolled tiny balls into a goal to earn sugar. Others watched through a clear wall and then copied the trick, sometimes improving it, nudging the ball a smarter way. Picture a stadium of miniature soccer with the world's politest fans. That you can teach a task like that doesn't mean bees were waiting for tiny sports equipment. It means their social life, their problem solving, their constant need to do the right thing at the right time has prepared them to grab patterns from the world and use them. Like you, when you learned how to load a dishwasher by glancing once at someone who'd already solved the puzzle. You walk on and a city's edge gathers around you. Brick, light, dry leaves spinning in curb eddies. A pigeon lands near your shoe and does that shy, sideways look. We call them common with the kind of tone that hides a small insult. But they're sharp. Studies taught pigeons to tell one person from another and remember the difference even after clothes changed. Feeders get soft coos, shooers get distance. Pigeons can sort photographs by category. Trees here, people there, learn letter-like shapes, even tell apart paintings by style if you reward them for good taste. It sounds like a party trick until you realize you couldn't do half of it at their speed with a beak for a cursor. They navigate home across distances that would confuse you without your phone. The humble bird pecking near your laces is a specialist in space and faces, quietly mapping the world while we ignore it. You crouch and the pigeon inches closer, head rocking with each step to stabilize the view the way cameras at a gimbal. A small crowd of them gathers with the efficiency of rain. If you're tempted to offer a crumb, let the thought float and fall. Tonight isn't about feeding. It's about recognizing you are surrounded by minds, each tuned to a life. The world keeps handing you examples. Dolphins with names traveling through water thick with conversation. Elephants pausing for memory because memory matters to them. Crows caching plans under shingles with a glance in your direction to see if you're trustworthy. Parrots using words to ask for what they want and to say no when they don't. Bees holding nothing as a concept and teaching each other tricks. Pigeons filing your face in a drawer labeled friendly or foe, and pulling that file years later. This doesn't make them people. It makes them themselves, thoroughly. You notice how your breathing has gotten shallow in the most comfortable way, the soft, steady rise and fall of someone listening with their whole body. That's a good sign. Your nervous system loved the underwater cities built of tiny agreements. It loves this too, the idea that intelligence isn't a contest but a garden. Different shapes, different colors, all of it working. If a corner of your mind wants to argue about what counts, let it tire itself out on definitions while the rest of you sinks into the good part. The sense that you live among neighbors who are busy being excellent at what they need to be excellent at. There's a small, generous joke humming under all this. You spent years assuming bird brain meant not much going on, and here you are, learning that a bird can judge your face and your art while you're still deciding whether to put the pudding on the top shelf or the bottom. Your gentle sarcasm can have a tiny chuckle at your expense. Then it can curl up and sleep because the punchline isn't mean. It's this: minds are everywhere, and they are not arranged in a neat pyramid with you on top. They're scattered like stars, bright in different ways. Let the scenes braid themselves without effort. The dolphin's name call floats out over water like a warm note in a low register. The elephant's trunk rests on a bone for a long, slow beat. The crow tucks a tool under a shingle and glances back at you, one glossy eye full of weather. The parrot says something perfectly small, want grape, and means exactly that. The bee touches the blank card and is right. The pigeon tilts its head and your face drops in a place in a file you will never see. You don't need to be practical with any of this tonight. In daylight, you can think about how knowing our neighbors' strengths might change how we live with them. Quiet crossings, kinds of care, the way cities could be kinder to birds and bees and to people with nerves that fray easily. That's for the sun. Now, the only job is to let your muscles sink as if a dolphin just exhaled under your ribs and lifted you to the surface. To let your jaw loosen the way an elephant's does when it decides to stop, and remember, to let your hands relax like a crow placing a tool and knowing it will still be there after the wind. The street lamp hum turns into the forest hiss again, into surf, into fan. All the sounds you like at night are group projects, thousands of wings, millions of leaves, entire oceans of small lives pushing and pulling the air until it organizes into what you call calm. You stand, and your shoulders roll lower than you thought they could. There's a final soft image waiting, a line of birds at dawn on a wire, each with a brain the size of your thumb, about to fly a distance that would tangle your maps, using the Earth's magnetic field like a highway sign you can't see. That's next, but don't rush to it. Let the minds you met tonight walk with you a few steps further, keeping you company the way a familiar song does when you forget the words and hum anyway. You're doing great at doing less. Keep the dolphin's note and the elephant's slow touch and the crow's neat plan and the parrot's small request and the bee's clever none and the pigeon's wary kindness. Let them shuffle themselves into a comfortable order and fade to the edge of hearing. The next part of the path opens onto groups that think together, bridges made of bodies, mounds with air that breathes by design, soil built by mouths without teeth. You like them. They're the forests and the city's engineers, and they work while you sleep. For now, take one more breath that feels like a long word said quietly. Let it out. Let your eyes go heavier. The night knows your name, in whatever shape it takes: whistle, touch, glance, buzz, coo, and it is already answering. You step off the city's sidewalk and into grass again, and the ground feels busy under your shoes, as if your weight sets off 1,000 polite notifications. This part of the night belongs to builders that don't use blueprints, to bodies that become bridges, to towers that breathe like lungs, and to the quiet mouths that turn fallen leaves into future forests. You don't have to do anything but watch. The work is already in motion. On a log ahead, a dark ribbon flows with its own edges, army ants on the move. They don't march around obstacles. They edit the terrain. When a column meets a gap, the ants at the front don't hold a meeting. One stops and hooks in. Another climbs on, then another, and another, until the flow becomes a living bridge. Workers cross over the backs of workers, and the structure flexes and thickens where the traffic is heaviest. No one ant knows the whole plan. Each one just reacts to what it feels. The push of neighbors, the tug of gravity, the small weight of a friend climbing onto its back. The bridge shortens if the route improves, lengthens if a better anchor appears. It is built the way breathing happens, locally, automatically, beautifully. You watch the shape change in real time, like a muscle learning to carry a load. The gentle sarcasm in you wants to call it infrastructure without permits. It's also kindness without compliments. Thousands of tiny choices stacking into a passable path. When they're done, the ants don't leave a monument. They unclasp, return to the river of bodies, and the bridge is a story again instead of a place. You've done smaller versions of this. Held a door without announcing it. Stood so someone could see. Pause in a conversation to make space for a softer voice. Not heroic. Necessary. Local rules. Right results. A breeze presses warm air across the field, and the scene shifts from wood to water. A ditch swells with rain, then swells again, and in the mud along its edge a different ant colony feels the world rising. Fire ants don't panic in floods. They dissemble. Mandible to leg, leg to mandible. They weave a flexible, waterproof raft, queen and brood tucked at the center like a treasure everyone agrees to guard. Air gets trapped between bodies, turning the raft into a float that rides out rough water for days, if it must. Disturb it and the surface ripples, adjusting, each ant taking a fraction more weight or less, the whole craft moving like a living fabric. The raft finds high ground, touches, adheres to a branch like a handshake, and the colony climbs off, shakes itself, and carries on. No insurance claim is filed. Someone at the edge shakes a droplet from a leg and goes looking for work. You picture that quiet resilience and feel your body answer by doing the same. Redistributing attention, making a raft for what you have tonight. One pillow, two blankets, a fan hum, a voice. It's enough. You don't need the whole toolbox to float. You need neighbors that know how to hold on and let go at the right time. Your muscles, your breath, your thoughts can do that for each other. Up the slope, a shape looms that looks like a small castle left by careful hands. A termite mound, tall and patterned, its skin a tapestry of pinholes and ridges. Inside, the temperature barely budges while the day outside swings hot to cool and back again. The mound breathes. Warm air rises from the deep chambers, slides through internal chimneys, escapes out high vents. Cooler air is drawn in low, swept through galleries where fresh fungus gardens grow, where eggs develop, where the colony moves grains and chews wood. The structure itself is the air conditioner. No dials, no wires, no diagram taped to a wall. The termites gather a little dirt, spit a little glue, test with their bodies, and repeat until the building works. If a wind shifts, they edit. If the sun angle changes the thermal draw, they patch and pinch and open where needed. Architecture as feedback loop. Put your hand near a tiny vent and you'd feel nothing, and still the draft is there, a slow current tuned by shape. You can almost hear buildings in hot cities taking notes. The mound teaches without claiming to teach. Make space for air to do what air wants. Let heat rise and leave. Pull coolness in through shade. Somewhere, human architects are already borrowing this logic, and the mound doesn't mind. It never claimed originality. It claimed function. That alone is calming. You don't need genius tonight. You need shape that lets your inner weather settle. You kneel and pinch a pinch of soil. It looks like brown crumbs. It's a metropolis. A teaspoon of healthy earth holds more microbes than there are people in the city you left, plus filaments and tiny arthropods and the rounded casts of earthworms who pass the ground through themselves and return it richer. Earthworms are the forest's quiet engineers. As they tunnel, they aerate compacted ground, making room for water to infiltrate and for roots to explore. As they eat dead leaves, they shred and mix them with minerals and microbes, and what emerges at the other end, castings, is high-grade fertilizer that plants are grateful to find. Their motion blends layers the way a kind baker folds batter until everything is one texture, no lumps, ready to rise. You can feel the soul of an old naturalist nodding somewhere, someone who once watched worms for months and decided they mattered more than anyone had given them credit for. Your jaw loosens at the thought. Big changes often come from bodies that don't care to be seen. Tonight, you are allowed to be a worm. Move a little, improve a lot, say nothing. A trickle becomes a stream, becomes a river hugging a bend, and along its bank the grass is cropped short where elk like to linger. In one version of this place, with no wolves for years, the elk graze without fear in the softest spots, river edges, where young trees try to rise. Saplings get nipped down and stay at ankle height. Beavers move on for lack of decent logs. Banks slump. The water widens and shallows under sun. Then the story bends. Wolves return, not as heroes in a children's book, not as villains in the stories that fear teeth, but as participants. The elk pay more attention to where they stand. They linger less at easy edges. Young willows and cottonwoods get a breather. They rise chin high, then shoulder high. Beavers notice. Dams appear, slow, leaky masterpieces that back water into ponds and side channels. Those ponds hold sediment, spread floods, create quiet nurseries for fish and frogs and birds. In places, banks firm up with roots. Some channels narrow and deepen, and the river redraws a few curves more tightly. Not everywhere, not overnight, but in enough pockets, over enough seasons, a ripple starts to look like a pattern. You let the nuance stay. It keeps the story honest and therefore more soothing. The wolves didn't personally pick up rocks and rebuild a channel. Their presence shifted behavior. Behavior shifted plants. Plants invited beavers. Beavers pushed water around with sticks until the landscape listened. It's a chorus, not a solo. That's the version that helps your body relax. A world where change is a conversation among many, and the loudest voice isn't the only one that counts. The air by the river smells colder and greener. You picture a beaver carrying a branch in its teeth, like someone walking home with a baguette. It places the stick exactly where a slight leak becomes a solid wall. Water pools. Mud thickens. Dragonflies find a nursery. Trout find a cooler alley in summer heat. The dam slows a flood here, stores a drink for a dry spell there. The work is constant, never finished, always perfect for the moment. You can live that way without feeling chaotic. You fix what the day asks you to fix. You sleep. You fix again. The dam you're making is made of small refusals to rush. Back at your feet, the soil work continues in miniature. Ants harvest seeds and, in their underground chambers, store them in dry rooms that sometimes become little gardens when a few forgotten kernels sprout. Beetles drag bits of protein underground where bacteria and fungi disassemble and reassign them. Roots press and release, thickening where water sits, thinning where rock hurries them. The surface looks still. It's an illusion. The ground is an airport. Arrivals, departures, maintenance, announcements you don't hear because they all speak molecule. The wind lifts and carries a paper-thin leaf like a slow sail. You remember the mycelium under the forest, the wood wide web, and hear an echo in the ant bridges, the termite chimneys, the beaver dams, structure as message. A bridge says cross here. A chimney says breathe this way. A dam says rest behind me. The reef did the same in water. The termites do it in air. The ants do it in motion. The beaver writes in water until the tree roots pick up the sentence and finish it in wood. None of them know the paragraph. That's fine. The paragraph writes itself. You step closer to the mound again and imagine the interior. Chambers for fungus the termites farm, hydrated by the gentle breath of the building itself. They bring in tough plant bits and let the fungus do the heavy digesting, then eat the soft results. Outsource the hard part, handle the rest. The principle is consistent. Share the load, design spaces that help physics help you, listen to feedback, and keep going. You can do that in bed. Give the heavy lifting to gravity, the timing to your breathing, the editing to your eyelids and let the night take over. A dragonfly schemes the river the way a skater trusts ice. Above the willows, a hawk floats like a thought you're not sure you had. Meanwhile, down in the dark, a worm pulls a crumb of leaf into a tunnel and turns it, by effort and mouth and motion, into a pellet of goodness the roots will find when the next rain threads its way down. Somewhere upstream, a wolf pads along a ridge at dusk and doesn't come close to you at all. The elk see that movement and choose a different meadow. Saplings along the bank let go of a year's ring. The beaver senses sound and slow water and decides where to place the next stick. The river considers its options and chooses a slightly narrower curve under a clump of willow that has held for 3 summers now. You breathe out, and your rib cage does the only thing it knows. It gives, then settles, then gives again. You feel the relief of patterns that don't need you to applaud. The ant bridge dissolves when it's done. The raft breaks up when land appears. The mound gets patched forever. The worm never retires. The wolf leaves footprints that a breeze erases. The river adjusts until the next big storm suggests a new sketch. They're not chasing perfection. They're chasing works today, and somehow that becomes beautiful. If your day brain has been carrying perfect like a heavy chair up too many flights, sit it down here by the mound. Termites don't have chairs. They have vents. Night leans in another inch. Your breathing matches it. You can feel how the ground, literal ground, has been softened by the lives that move through it. The air near your face has been softened by chimneys and leaves. The water has been softened by dams and roots. The way forward has been softened by bodies that form bridges and then become themselves again. You're walking through a world that edits itself for comfort where it can. Your job is to say yes. As you turn from the river, a last, quiet image taps your shoulder. A line of ants carrying crumbs twice their size along a path, smoothed by 1,000 feet the size of commas. One stumbles. The next shifts to help. The line never stops. In that small choreography is the same wisdom you liked in the whale's songs and the forest's whispers and the reef's moonlit calendar. We don't need a conductor when the music is written into the instruments. The path ahead narrows into dusk and then into dark. Somewhere in that dark, other instruments wait. Owls whose flight refuses to make a sound. Bats that red space with echoes. Snakes that see heat with their faces. Birds that feel the planet itself and fly home by compass you can't see. You won't have to learn any of it. You'll borrow their night skills simply by listening. For now, allow yourself one more deep exhale, the kind that empties more than air. The ground is busy. The water is organized. The air is designed. You are carried. Night leans closer and the air cools until your breath feels like a small scarf you didn't notice you were wearing. Something passes above you, big and soft, and the world does not make sound. That silence is a signature. Owls don't just fly. They erase their own footprints in the air. The front edge of each wing has tiny serrations that turn rough, noisy turbulence into feathery eddies. The trailing edge is fringed like the hem of a well-loved blanket, and the surface wears a velvet that drinks sound. Where another bird would hiss with effort, the owl slides. If you could see the wake behind it, it would look like a hush spread out thin. The silence isn't aesthetic, it's practical. An owl hunts by hearing as much as by sight, and prey hears too. The less noise from the wings, the more useful the whisper of a mouse under leaves becomes. The owl's face is a satellite dish, feathers arranged to funnel sound inward. One ear sits a bit higher than the other, a tidy asymmetry that tells it whether the sound is up or down without thinking. You stand very still and try on that kind of listening. Your eyes soften, and sound fills in around you. A leaf's paper sigh, a beetle ticking, the distant brush of something small against bark. The owl hangs on the air just long enough for you to understand that some mastery feels like disappearing. Then the night adds a different instrument, and this one is easy to miss if you're trying too hard. A bat writes a map you can't read with calls you can't hear. It throws high-pitched pulses into the dark and waits for the replies to come home, carrying shape. Each echo is a piece of geometry, distance, direction, texture, packed into a split second. The bat stitches those pieces together into a corridor you couldn't thread with a flashlight. It can catch a mosquito mid-flight, in the dark, while dodging branches that would shred your face, using nothing but sound folded back on itself. Think of it less like shouting and more like tapping a cane, except the cane reaches everywhere at once. The bat changes the pattern when it nears a snack. The call rate accelerates into a feeding buzz, like a sewing machine winding up just before the thread binds in the fabric and the stitch lands. Some species whisper when they hunt because dinner has ears. Others shout because speed matters more than manners. All of them are reading the world with a sense most of us treat as secondary. You borrowed a whale's low notes earlier. Now borrow this. Sound as flashlight, sound as handrail, sound as a way to paint the room and walk through it in one motion. Your inner sarcasm wants to say, must be nice to have superpowers. It is nice. It's also just biology doing what works. You've used versions of it all your life, talking in the dark so you don't walk into someone, listening for the difference between an empty room and one with a couch too low to see, letting the click of your tongue tell you how big a stairwell feels. You can smile at the thought that you echolocate a little when you slap the counter and hear the room answer. Add just enough wonder to keep the sarcasm warm instead of sharp, then let it fade. Down where the grass loses its shape and becomes shadow, something moves like water poured into a rope. A snake pauses, head lifted slightly, tongue tasting. It is night, and sight is helpful, but not king. On the snake's face, between the eye and the nostril, small pits open into a membrane tuned to heat. Warm-blooded bodies glow in a spectrum you don't see. The pit organ translates invisible rays into a picture the snake can use. A mouse is not just a mouse. It's a soft flare against cooler ground, a silhouette of warmth. The image isn't a photograph. It's a thermal map, enough to tell the difference between a stone that held sun and a body that pumps heat from inside. Pit vipers wear this gear with style. Pythons and boas carry versions of it, too. The snake isn't seeing with the pits in the way you see with eyes. It's blending channels, stitching heat into a composite sense of the corridor ahead. The result is competence that doesn't need moonlight. If that makes your skin ripple, part of that is old wiring. Primates remember snakes the way the sea remembers the moon. Let the ripple pass and notice the calm under it. Nothing here is aimed at you. You are watching a tool fit a job with the elegance of a key turning a lock. You felt a cousin to this when you walk into a room and know where the window is before you see it, simply by the way the air feels on your forearm. A flutter overhead, quieter than you'd expect, louder than an owl, and a small body darts through a space you wouldn't have guessed was wide enough. The bat remains the room's curator, placing call and answer into the corners. You let your ears try to catch something they can't, and in that stretch your nervous system relaxes. The reaching is the point. Sleep waits for you in the act of trying and failing gently to hear frequencies that were never meant for you. The night is busy without you, and somehow that's a comfort. Lift your eyes. The sky is a dark river with faint tilting lights. Somewhere in that high empty, a long-winged bird rides a thermal, body hardly moving, mind ticking through a checklist older than geography. Birds do what your inner GPS pretends to do, but can't without a tower. Feel where they are in a world without street signs. Some carry the equivalent of a tiny compass in their heads built from crystals that align with the planet's magnetic field, like a grain of sand arrow always pointing a useful way. Others seem to carry magnets in their beaks that send small messages through sensitive nerves when they tilt into the field lines. And there's another lovely trick. Proteins in the eyes that react to light in a way that might let certain birds see magnetic fields as a faint shape or shade laid over the world, a HUD for migration. They don't debate the chemistry. They use the overlay and go. I don't get that view, but we can ride along in the imagination. You picture a robin lifting at dawn and seeing a faint band leaning from sky to ground, always in the same direction, a translucent ribbon that says home is that way. Warblers cross environments you'd call impossible to measure without tools. Oceans, deserts, and still land near last year's tree, as if the earth itself whispered them a map. Sea turtles do versions of this. Salmon, too. But tonight the sky is the bird's highway, a lattice of lines that never flicker. And your job is to feel how much calmer the world gets when you believe direction exists, even when you don't have words for it. You hold that compass overlay in your mind, and then picture the edge of it going fuzzy. Birds get tired. They need rest. The ocean doesn't offer benches. So some of them drift and nap in ways that feel like magic until you break them into steps. Frigate birds, those long sickle-winged pirates of the sky, can sleep while they fly. Not all of the brain at once. Half at a time, a neat trick called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. One hemisphere rests. The other keeps an eye open enough to steer and not crash. The body stays aloft on wind and physics. The nap is shallow and short and repeating. It isn't a luxury. It's a way to survive a long glide over miles of blank water. You borrow that trick now without leaving your bed. You let one part of you soften into sleep. Hands, face, legs, while a thin sliver of mind stays aware enough to keep the story moving, the way a pilot rides an updraft with fingers barely on the controls. As the narrative rocks gently, the wakeful sliver gets bored and dozes too. You don't have to declare sleep. You do it the way a frigate bird does, gradually, wisely, in pulses that add up until you've crossed the ocean of your own wakefulness and found the coast. Different birds do different versions of sky sleep and compass reading. Alpine swifts can stay aloft for long stretches, riding mountain winds and napping impulses. A robin on migration carries a simpler toolkit, but uses it like a pro. Stars when it's clear, the sun's arc when it's not, the magnetic field when the bright cues fail. Skills stack. None of it requires an app. Somewhere in you, the idea that the world offers cues if you get quiet enough lands like a leaf on water. You don't need to articulate the cues. You only need to trust that they exist. Night on land continues its slow breathing. You step out of the trees and back onto open ground where the skyline is a low, dark wave. In the distance, a giraffe moves like a thought that forgot to pick up its feet. There's something endearing about an animal that tall pretending it can sneak. We imagine giraffes as perpetually awake spotters, lookout towers on hooves. In truth, they sleep very little, maybe half an hour to 2 hours in a day, often in short bursts. Sometimes they stand and drift in and out, eyes open around the edges of a dream. Sometimes, when it's safe, they fold and tuck their necks back in an arc only a giraffe could love, sinking into a brief, deep sleep, a handful of minutes where the world and the body agree to disappear together. You can feel the reason in your own bones. Being tall and soft in a place with teeth means keeping sleep small and efficient. One animal in a group may keep watch while others catch these micro-sleeps, a shared bargain with the night. The cool part isn't the number, it's the confidence. Enough isn't a fixed amount here. Enough is what works given the risks. If that lands as permission for you to relax without perfect conditions, good. You don't need the ideal pillow tower and the exact right sock situation and the absence of every noise. You can find sleep in heartbeats. One good micro nap stacked on another becomes a rest that carries you to morning. Imagine your own version. Eyes half closed, adrift so light you could come back in a second if you needed to, but you don't, so you keep going. You won't fold your neck like a giraffe, but you can curve your spine into the shape of comfort, a pose that tells your nervous system, nobody's hunting us. Let's be ridiculous and safe. The fan's hush is your savanna. The door's latch is your horizon line. If a sound rises, let one ear be the awake half of your brain for a moment, the other half sleeping anyway. The awake half will report no problem and go quiet. You're not obligated to perform full consciousness. You can glide. Overhead, an owl passes again, turning the air into information without alerting anyone to it. A bat dots the space with invisible beads and strings them into a corridor. Somewhere along a hedgerow, a snake reads warmth the way you read an emoji. Up where cloud becomes ink, a bird rides the lines that run pole to pole and takes a shallow nap between breaths. Out on the plain, a giraffe counts sleep in small coins and never feels poor. The night is an open course in how to perceive what you need and ignore the rest. Imagine seeing what birds might see. A faint aurora that isn't weather, a slow curtain marking north and south, a thread of direction sewn into the night. Your brain can't render it for real, but your body understands a concept. You've followed less visible threads, gut feelings, muscle memories, the way your feet find the kitchen in the dark without mapping every step. You'll follow one now into the gentlest part of yourself. You've been practicing it for an hour without naming it. If your mind tries to reassert control, but how do the proteins in the eye? Give it a gold star for curiosity and ask it to take the rest of the night off. You can look up cryptochrome and magnetite in the morning and make friends with the radical pair mechanism over breakfast, if that's your flavor of fun. Right now, you're building a nest out of borrowed senses. Line it with silence from an owl. Map it with echoes from a bat. Warm it with the outline a snake reads. Lace it with the compass lines a bird feels. And lay your head in it the way a giraffe does when the world finally offers a pocket of safety. It doesn't need to last 8 hours straight. It needs to be enough, then enough again until dawn. The pasture breathes. The sky breathes. You breathe. The night is not empty. It's edited. The animals you've met are masters of that. Keep what matters. Drop the rest. An owl keeps the whisper of a mouse and drops its own wing noise. A bat keeps echoes and drops everything outside its frequency. A snake keeps heat at mouse shape and drops sun-warmed stones. A bird keeps a magnetic line and drops unnecessary detours. A giraffe keeps 2-minute naps and drops the myth that sleep has to be one big piece to count. You step lightly and the ground takes your weight without complaint. The path ahead brightens in your mind, as if the earth's field itself tilted your head the right way. In that light, the next scenes are waiting, cold and heat tricks, animals that beat winter by freezing solid and coming back, fur that changes color with the season, a kangaroo's pause button for pregnancy, a camel's easy endurance. But you don't have to rush to them. You can take one more small nap with your eyes open, the way a bird does on the wing. One side of your mind loosens. Then the other side gets jealous and loosens too. There's nothing else to do. Let the owl erase the edges of your thoughts. Let the bat thread a path you don't need to see. Let the snake's calm heat map remind you that bodies are mostly physics with feelings. Let the bird's magnetic ribbon give you a direction. Towards sleep, always towards sleep. Let the giraffe show you that a handful of minutes can feel like a gift if you take them honestly. The night will keep watch. It's very good at that. The air thins and cools as if someone opened a drawer full of cold and let it glide out over the grass. You follow that temperature down a path until the ground itself looks glazed, a breath away from frost. Here, in this edge of weather, you meet a creature that treats ice like an intermission cue. A small frog sits low, the color of old leaves, eyes half-lidded. You lean in, and the frog does the most dramatic thing an animal can do in winter. It stops. Not a nap, a full-body pause. Water in the spaces around its organs turns solid. Its heart goes quiet. Blood halts. The frog hardens like a little sculpture left on the forest floor. Inside those still cells, sugars surge, acting like natural antifreeze. Ice presses at the edges, but doesn't shatter the delicate machinery. It's not a trick, it's policy. The wood frog survives as a popsicle for days or weeks. Then, when melt returns, the ice loosens, the heart ticks, and spring writes a green line through the brown. You hold your breath with it and feel the body-level comfort of an extreme strategy that works. Shut it all down. Wait. Wake when conditions change. The frog doesn't compose a poem about resilience. It simply outlasts the cold by becoming the cold, then steps back into motion as if the break was nothing more than a blink. Your nervous system gets the message quietly. Sometimes the best action is none at all, followed by a small, decisive yes. Follow that yes to the edge of the world where cold treats ocean like a glass counter. South, farther south than your travel apps remember to mark. The water slides beneath continents of ice, and a pale fish moves through it like a thought that prefers empty rooms. Its blood is almost clear. It doesn't carry red because in this frigid water, the oxygen dissolves well enough to ride without hemoglobin in a pinch. More importantly, this fish, an ice fish, has proteins in its blood that grab onto tiny ice crystals and say, "No bigger," the way a firm parent stops a tantrum before it starts. Antifreeze proteins latch to the seed of ice and prevent it from growing. The fish's world sits below water's ordinary freezing point, salted down, dangerous to anything unprepared. The ice fish is prepared, drift calm, translucent-blooded, proof that life can move the goalposts for possible with a few molecules and a lot of time. Your shoulders drop at the idea of chemistry, making a home where thermometers say no. If a fish can keep ice as confetti instead of knives, you can let your thoughts sit like snow without packing them into hard shapes. Let them fall. Let them vanish on your sleeve. Back above sea level, where wind combs low plants into a single direction and the horizon keeps a straight face, a fox moves like a whispered word. In summer, it wears a fur the color of rocks and old grass. In winter, the coat switches flags and goes white, a cloak tailored by the season itself. The Arctic fox doesn't just change color to hide. The fur thickens into one of the best winter outfits on Earth, trapping still air close to skin, growing over the paws so toes don't argue with snow, letting the fox curl into itself like a comma and keep its own heat reveled tight. Camouflage and insulation in one slow transformation, practical and beautiful, like repainting a house and finding it warmer after, too. You remember a line from earlier about structural color, blues that are physics and not paint, and file it away for later. Tonight, the fox's white is pigment and density and the soft fact that survival often looks like elegance when you're not the one doing the work. In summer, it is rock. In winter, it is snow. It becomes the land until the land forgets it was ever separate. The cold ends cleanly at an ocean that dots itself with islands of black and white. On a rocky shore, a bird stands with dignity and a pebble. He bows a little, just enough to say, "I brought this on purpose," and offers the stone to a partner whose standards are both high and practical. Penguins build with what they have. The best pebbles are currency and love note and engineering solution all at once, nested up into a platform that keeps eggs from pooling meltwater, keeps young from resting on ice like bare feet on freezer metal. The ritual is almost funny. Tiny rocks presented with ceremony in a place loud with wind and distant surf. It works. Pair after pair passes, stones back and forth, until a nest rises just enough to matter. Your inner sarcasm can't resist. Romance, but make it geology. Then your sincerity takes the mic. Care is care, whether it's a blanket tucked or a pebble placed. You can't do much for anyone when you're asleep, but you can stack your equivalent of pebbles now. Pillow right, blanket edge just so, fan angled to the exact whisper that keeps worries away. It's not grand. It's precise. That's the point. Walk the map's needle opposite from ice to heat until the light itself looks thirsty. Sand ridges hold the day's memory. A set of wide, soft prints cross the dune without sinking deep. A camel rides its own shadow, unhurried. And if you grew up with the sentence, "Camels store water in their humps," here's your gentle correction. They store fat upstairs, an energy account they can draw down without sloshing. The water wisdom is everywhere else. Oval red blood cells keep flowing even when the blood thickens. Kidneys hang on a moisture like collectors who know when to say no. Nostrils condense breath, take back vapor that would otherwise become sky. Body temperature drifts over a range wide enough to postpone sweating until it's worth the loss. When water finally appears, a camel will drink like a pro, vortices in the throat helping the flow, 30 gallons of yes in minutes, then back to patient mode. You don't need the numbers to feel the principle settle into your bones. Spend less when the world is taking more. Save where you can. Endure elegantly. And when abundance returns, when a kindness appears, when a morning is easy, drink, then hold. Your body knows this in miniature. It timestamps sleep, concentrates repairs, releases hormones in careful drips. You don't have a hump. You have a habit. Same idea. Not far from the dunes, where hills fold into bush and the air shivers with insects invisible until you bother to look, a different strategy ticks quietly in a marsupial calendar. A kangaroo with a joey in the pouch and another already out on springy legs can be pregnant with a third, and then press pause. Embryonic diapause is the official term, which sounds like a tedious meeting. In practice, it's a grace note. If conditions aren't right, poor food, crowded pouch, heat not worth arguing with. The embryo holds at a free-floating stage and waits until the mother's body says go. Meanwhile, milk recipes vary by nipple. One teat offers the high-fat blend a tiny pouch dweller needs. Another delivers a different mix better for the older joey. The kitchen runs politely on multiple menus. The stove takes orders from the weather, and time itself cooperates. You can feel your own pulse mimic the policy. You have things you could do tonight. You might even want to do them. They can wait, like a paused embryo floating on the kind of patience only the dark offers. You're allowed to press your own pause button without apology and resume when the morning turns on the lights. Circle back to the cold for a breath and notice how a polar bear looks like snow and isn't. Beneath that thick fur, hollow hairs that scatter light into the white you see, the skin is black. It drinks the sun like a dark rock and holds the heat inside while the wind tries to be persuasive. The bear's paws are rough with little bumps for traction on ice. The way your favorite slippers are nubbly just enough to keep you upright at 2 a.m. Its body keeps warmth with fat and fur and still swims icy water with an ease that would knock the air from your chest in a second. Everything about its design is minimal fuss, maximum function, including the fur's trick with light, translucent hair pretending to be snow, the world's kindest magic act. You realize this entire stretch of the night has been about budgets and cleverness. The frog's sugar math to protect cells, the fish's antifreeze to block crystals, the fox's wardrobe and insulation in one, the penguin's pebble gifts that lift a family above melt, the camel's controlled spending of water, the kangaroo's elegant delay, the bear's invisible solar panel under a coat that speaks snow. The forest taught you to budget starch until dawn. This is the same story at different temperatures. The planet writes enough into bodies in 100 fonts. If a small itch of worry rises about melting, about heat waves, about winters and summers not behaving like they used to, notice it, nod, and set it gently by the penguin's nest for later. Caring and sleeping are not mutually exclusive. They take turns. Tonight, let the designs themselves reassure you that life leans clever as a rule and that you're part of that leaning. You keep walking and notice how the landscape edits itself for each customer. The fox's white coat fades as dusk loosens. The penguin's pebbles catch a slant of moon and look like low stars. The camel stops so slowly it's like a cloud, deciding to rest and choose with a rhythm you can copy if you'd like your jaw to remember unfussy work. The kangaroo's pouch is a portable room where time waits politely outside the door. The frog under the leaf looks like nothing in particular except the possibility of spring wrapped in sugar. Even the insects at your feet know the cold well enough to refuse it. Small bodies make small decisions. Build glycerol in the blood and don't let ice form in the wrong places. Curl under bark at the right angle. Wake when the angle of sun comes back to the exact slope you've memorized. You don't have to memorize that slope. Your job is easier. Find the angle of a pillow that lets your neck remember it isn't a giraffe and that you aren't being asked to keep watch. Something else shifts as you breathe. The world slides from temperature stories to color stories without switching the lights. A moth's wing flashes a dull blue that isn't pigment at all, but structure, light bent by microscopic layers into a shade your eye decides is sky. A jay folds into a branch and keeps its blue even in shade because the color is made by interference, not paint. Tomorrow's section will open that drawer. Why blue is rare as pigment and common as trick. Why peacocks sparkle and morphos glow. Why a bird of paradise can wear velvet that eats light and then dance like the world built a stage just for showing off. But that's for later. For now, rest with the comfort that nature doesn't make one rule for all. It writes specifics into bodies so they can say yes to the places they love. A frog says yes to winter by becoming ice. A fish says yes to salt cold with proteins that pat ice on the head and keep it small. A fox says yes to snow by wearing snow. A penguin says yes to wet by lifting new life above it, pebble by pebble. A camel says yes to thirst by being stingy and then lavish in the right order. A kangaroo says yes to uncertainty by letting time hold an embryo like a note sustained until the chord resolves. A polar bear says yes to sun by hiding black skin under white fur and refusing to explain the joke. Find your yes that fits the room you're in. Maybe it's the heavier blanket. Maybe it's the fan that makes you think of surf. Maybe it's turning the screen face down. Maybe it's nothing at all, but a long exhale and the decision to become a frog for a few hours. Solid. Still, saved by chemistry you don't have to manage manually. When warmth returns, because it always does, you'll wake like the frog, like the ice fish moving with an ease that looks like grace, like the fox stepping from white into green at the exact right week. One last look over the shoulder at this chapter of temperature. The penguin bows again, this time to no one in particular, and places a pebble that clicks like a small promise. The camel turns its head and blinks sideways, unbothered by your need to be sentimental about how good it is at being a camel. The kangaroo's pouch shifts, and something tiny inside does a soft push that will become the loudest life later. The polar bear shakes and throws crystals from its coat like glitter that refuses to be trash. The frog doesn't move. It is perfect where it is. You are, too. Ahead, the path leans toward color and light, toward blues made from structure, not dye, toward feathers that drink brightness until they look like black holes with edges, toward spiders that pull silk stronger than steel in a web that manages wind like a harp. Fireflies wait with their good manners and their bright grammar. The night is going to glow again, but from bodies that chose their own lamps. For now, keep your pace slow. Warm under blanket, cool at cheek. Drift. Sleep is a climate you can make. You follow warmth into a shallower night, and the world starts quietly showing off, the way a good friend does when you finally say, "Okay, tell me your favorite thing." A feather on the path flashes blue when you tilt it, then turns plain gray when you stop. That's your first clue. Sometimes color isn't something you can scrape off and put in a jar. Sometimes it's a trick of structure, light bent and bounced in ways that tell your eyes a story your fingers can't touch. Blue especially loves this trick. True blue pigment is rare and pricey in the economy of living things. So nature cheats kindly. It builds microscopic lattices that scatter shorter wavelengths back to you and swallow the rest. A blue jay doesn't carry blue dye. It wears 1,000 tiny mirrors arranged just so. Grind a feather, and you get dust the color of cardboard. Hold one intact, and you get sky caught in keratin. It's not a lie. It's physics keeping a secret. You lift the feather and turn it slowly. The color tips in and out like a tide of brightness. Think of butterfly wings, morpho blues that look electric because they are, in a way, charging your eyes with angles. Their scales carry layers of ridges spaced at just the right distances to interfere with light in your favor. Cancel some wavelengths, amplify others, and the result looks like a new color grew in the air that wasn't there a second ago. Imagine a peacock, shameless and correct, tilting his train into sunlight, so circles of eye spots ignite. Those circles aren't painted. They're built. Your brain reads their depth as luxury, because it is. Color also vanishes on purpose. In a patch of forest shadow, A bird of paradise stands on a cleared stage. A male who spent the minutes before you arrived picking twigs and leaves from the floor like a meticulous janitor who also happens to be a choreographer. When a stage is clean and the light falls just right, he unfurls velvet black that looks less like fabric and more like a hole cut in the world. The black is structural, a microforest of tiny barbules that trap light and cancel reflections. Around that void, rings of iridescent green and blue flare and fold like shutters. He dances with the invention of someone who's had 1,000,000 years to rehearse. A female watches from a branch and decides, all on her own schedule, whether this particular performance earns a yes. The sarcasm in you wants to say, so it's a talent show. It is, and the judges are tough, and the prize is the future. The velvet black is not for you. It's a laser pointer for a single gaze that matters tonight. Color can hide, too. Not here, not now, but underwater where the sand is white and the rocks are mottled. A cuttlefish floats like a thought pretending to be a rock. Its skin is a living screen. Just under the surface, cells full of pigment expand and contract. Chromatophores making browns, reds, and yellows in soft pulses. Beneath them, iridophores and leucophores add structural sheen and white, stacking shine under paint like a very fancy kitchen renovation. Tiny muscles lift and flatten little skin spikes called papillae so texture matches pebbles or weeds. The punchline, whispered and excellent. Cuttlefish are colorblind. They don't see the colors they make the way you do. They read brightness, contrast, polarization, pattern. They memorize tide pool languages and answer convincingly without knowing the dictionary. You've done this on days when you didn't know the words, but somehow said exactly the right thing anyway. Skin as sentence. Camouflage as fluent. You walk a little and light puddles near your feet the way water does when a street lamp finds a wet patch. The puddles flicker, except there's no water. It's fireflies. Their light is honest chemistry. Luciferin meeting oxygen in the hands of an enzyme named luciferase, a tiny reaction that turns saved energy into cold light with barely any waste. Each species flashes a rhythm. Males stitch patterns in the air. Blink, blink, pause, blink, a little Morse code for me over here. Females answer with timed replies from grass or branch, and whole groves become conversations you can't decode, but can feel. The way a good jazz room sounds full even when you don't know the changes. In some places, entire communities of fireflies switch to a consensus and flash at once, waves of light rolling through trees like applause that learn choreography. There's a darker joke here. In one genus, females mimic the flash of another species and eat the hopeful fellows who come in. Nature hosts many parties. Not all of them are kind. You don't have to linger on that tonight. Stay with the soft grammar, the idea that light itself can be a verb. Come. Here. Yes. Wait. You breathe, and your chest replies with its own lightless code. Slow now. Slower, slower still. Spiders write music you can walk through and let it hum against your skin. Their silk, weight for weight, outpulls steel and refuses to snap like a stressed hair. They pull it in different flavors from their bodies. Dragline for strength, capture spiral for sticky grace, wrapping silk for parcels, scaffold for the studio itself. An orb web is more than a net. It's a calculator. Thread spacing and tension tell the spider who landed where, how big, how much struggle, whether the trip is worth the energy. Some species sit at the hub and keep one leg on a taut line, the signal line, to feel the whole thing like a guitar string that happens to feed you. Dew beads on the silk at dawn and shows you what was invisible at night. Geometry that forgives the wind and restores itself after every disaster, because rewinding is cheaper than regret. The web holds, fails, gets repaired. You do the same with your days. Congratulations. You and a spider have a shared workflow. Your fingers brush a twig and catch a ribbon of gossamer, and the line vibrates, once then settles, a tiny echo of a much larger instrument, the Earth's field, which you can't see but birds can. Color, light, magnet, sound. They braid into one gentle argument. The world is readable in more ways than you've been trained to use. You don't have to use them all. You're allowed to be dazzled while doing nothing about it. There's a plant nearby that looks like a plain green prop until it doesn't. A Venus flytrap holds its open jaws flat, trigger hairs poised. It isn't counting in the way you count, but it is counting. One touch, and nothing happens. Two touches on the same hair, or two hairs within about 20 seconds, and snap. The trap closes in less than a blink, then tightens slowly into a stomach, digesting what said hello a little too enthusiastically. The logic is neat. Avoid false alarms like raindrops. Act on true signals like footsteps. The plant's body holds a clock. You can copy that tonight. One thought ping is noise. Two is action. The first worry is water. The second is a visitor you've already stopped inviting. Don't feed it. A chameleon leans into the scene, almost as a punchline. Yes, they change color. No, it's not just a hide. Their skin carries crystals arranged in nanoscopic lattices. By flexing skin, they change the spacing between crystals, tuning which wavelengths bounce back. Calm lizard, earth tones. Hot lizard, brighter, more reflective palette to shed heat. Showing off, warning, flirting. Out come the yellows and blues and oranges in a postcard that says what words would only slow down. The mood is not for you. It's local, like a note slid under a door. Occupied, interested, back off. You've done this with shirts, with shoes, with the angle of a hat brim. Information first, fashion second, except when you're a bird of paradise and those are the same task. You sit on a rock and the world arranges a low-key fashion show. A jay that was gray a moment ago tilts and becomes sky. A beetle turns like a drop of oil and wears a rainbow because its shell is a stack of layers thinner than a sigh. A damselfly's wing is clear until the angle goes black and then back to nothing, like a magician proving there's no trick and then performing the trick anyway. Somewhere in the grass, a tiny blue flower that looked unremarkable at noon now glows because your pupils are wide and you're finally paying attention. Overhead, you imagine a bird of paradise finishing his dance whether anyone is watching or not. He'll do it again tomorrow. The web in the hedgerow will get torn and remade. Fireflies will write and erase their light and write it again. The cuttlefish will shift from rock to sand to weed pattern and back in the time it takes you to say, wow. And if you ask it how, it will shrug with a skin that answers without words. That's what you're practicing. Answers without words. Your body is very good at them when your mouth gets out of the way. Color that isn't pigment. Light that isn't heat. Strength that isn't loud. Communication without sound. The night is gathering all the quiet ways the world shows off and placing them in your lap. You don't need to sort or save them. Let them arrange themselves the way dew arranges itself on a web, bead by bead, perfectly spaced by accident and design held together by nothing you can see. Your gentle sarcasm peeks out for a second. So the world is a runway, bugs are models, plants are stagehands, birds are choreographers, and spiders do rigging? Fine. Yes. Also, it works. You don't have to respect the metaphor to enjoy the show. The point is not that everything is beautiful. It is. Or that color is magic. It's math. Or that fireflies are romantic. They are, and also very practical. The point is that you live in a place tuned for attention, and turned down low enough, attention becomes calm. Let a last small scene glow for you. A field edge at the tail of summer, small lamps rising and falling. Some flashes are long and lazy, some quick and clipped. You don't know which is which, but you can imagine a sentence there. Here I am. I see you. Hold on. Now. Your breath takes the hint and answers with its own sentence. Here I am. I see me. Hold on. Now. That's all the grammar you need. Tuck one more secret under your pillow. Your body glows, too. Just a whisper. Photons released by chemistry that never stops. A shimmer far below what your eyes can catch. Your brain runs on sparks smaller than that. You are a firefly turned inward, a web of light no one else can see, a velvet dark with messages drawn across it, a field where things say yes by changing shape. Tomorrow we'll go there, into you, the world within the world, the microbes that make your second brain, the cells that rebuild you, the sparks that write your thoughts. Tonight, rest in the simpler version. Color that isn't there is still color. Light that doesn't warm still guides. Silk thinner than a sigh still holds when the wind wants to make a mess of things. None of it is trying. It's all just doing what works, artfully. Close your eyes and let blue stay on the inside of your eyelids the way it does after you stare at sky. Let the peacock keep his engine running without you. Let the spider mind the lines. Let the cuttlefish practice being sand. Let the fireflies say what they must, and let their answers be enough. You can join the show by not moving. You're already glowing more than you know. You promised yourself we'd go inward, and here we are, no ticket needed, just a breath and the small permission to notice that you are not a single thing. You're a neighborhood, a city, a reef with skin, on your arm, in your mouth, deep in the long spiral of your gut. Whole communities live quiet, busy lives, trading sugars for shelter the way corals and their sunroom roommates did back in the warm water. Trillions of microbes, bacteria, fungi, archaea, the occasional virus minding its manners. Make up your microbiome, a second brain without a skull, whispering to your immune system, helping you digest, mixing vitamins like bartenders who know your order. Some guard the door, shouldering out trouble. Some break down food you can't handle alone and slide you the best parts. All of them together are a choir that sings steady when you're steady and hang on when you need to hang on. If you want to feel the scale, put your palm on your belly and imagine a night market. Lanterns strung under ribs, steam rising, stalls exchanging stories and nutrients. Different corners sell different specialties. A little fermentation here, a little fiber processing there, signals traveling like text messages with better boundaries. It isn't all peace and dumplings. Sometimes a pushy vendor shows up and tries to overrun the block. But mostly it's balance. When you feed the market well, greens, beans, plants that make your plate look like a cheerful argument. Neighbors thrive who pay their rent in kindness. Your mood often notices, even if it can't write the biochemistry. You get a calmer morning for free, courtesy of microbes that never learned your name and don't need it. You chuckle a little at the thought you were ever alone. Remember the lichen on the bark, partnership between fungus and photosynthesizer? You are a deluxe version of that deal, except your partners change day to day and there's no lease to sign. The forest shared sugar through mycelium. You share through a million tiny handoffs shotgunning through your gut wall like care packages. A coral polyp let algae squat in its tissues and got sugar for rent. You let microbes squat and get vitamins, training sessions for your immune cells, even a mild mood lift on days when your inner sarcasm wants to take the wheel. Yourself isn't a solid outline. It's a fuzzy edge where you and not you arrange a truce and call it health. Zoom in farther, smaller than any market, past the tile of your skin and the silk of your hair, past the little sparks of your nerves, down into a single cell. It's easier than a dream and almost as weird. The edges are not walls, more like guarded gates. Inside, organelles hustle. Mitochondria chug along like miniature power stations. Membranes fold like origami to make room. Molecules arrive at docks, depart on timers, bump into old friends, start new clubs. Every cell is a room full of tools, and every tool knows what to do because chemistry is a tidy tyrant. Your body is about 30 trillion of these rooms. Muscle and nerve and bone and epithelium, each with a to-do list. They divide, they retire, they die politely. New ones take their place. You're a ship replaced board by board, but somehow the ship keeps sailing and calling itself you. Here's a small, drowsy miracle you rarely get credit for. You rebuild while you rest. Skin turns over, slowly repainting you from the outside in. The gut lining renews, because a market needs clean counters. Bone remodels, dissolving where stress says too much, and laying down new scaffolding where force says more here. Even your blood is an endless procession from marrow to mission to return. If your day was rough, remember this. While you slept last time, you were quietly replaced in pieces, and no one sent you a bill. Now tilt your head until the sky behind your eyelids goes star black, and let a bigger truth slide into place. The calcium in your bones, the quiet strength that holds you upright, was forged inside ancient stars. Iron in your blood learned its temperament in the hearts of supernovae. Carbon in your muscles rode a dust cloud's slow carousel until gravity said, "Enough talking," and made a world. You are quite literally stardust organized into a creature that can laugh at the idea of being stardust. If that feels too grand for a bedtime story, tuck it smaller. You're a pile of borrowed atoms wearing a pattern that thinks. You're the reef and the forest and the tide pool and also the night sky, all renting space under a name you chose. Viruses helped write that name. Not the annoying kind that bring tissue boxes and soup, but ancient visitors who left pieces of themselves in your ancestors' reproductive cells and never left. Around 8% of your genome reads like postcard from these old infections. Retroviral sequences now so domesticated they run errands. Some help build the placenta, some influence brain wiring, some lie quiet and wait for their one small moment like extras in the movie of you. It's unnerving if you squint at it. It's also incredibly practical. Evolution is a thrift store. If a sequence fits, it gets hemmed and worn to dinner. You smile at the scandal of it and then let it soften. You are part mammal, part microbe host, part scrapbook of ancient viruses, part star mineraled into bone. No wonder you feel like a crowd sometimes. Crowds need managers, and your brain obliges with tiny, crisp sparks. Under your skull, 80-ish billion neurons talk in electricity and chemistry, writing your thoughts as patterns that behave more like weather than math homework. Fronts moving in, breezes dying down, storms of ideas that pass without ruining the crops. Each spark is a whisper across a synapse, a puff of ions through a gate that says, "Now, not yet," again. Even when you sleep, the conversation continues at low volume, cleaning, filing, refolding, picking up the Lego bricks so tomorrow's feet don't swear. With the lights this low, you're allowed to remember the other glow, too, the one you can't see. Your body emits a faint biophotonic shimmer, photons released during ordinary chemistry, way below what your eyes detect. Ultra-sensitive cameras have caught it, face brighter in late afternoon, a little lull at night, barely there, but there. You're a firefly turned inward, glowing mostly for yourself. That thought lands like a blanket. Even when you feel quiet to the edge of empty, something in you is making light and not asking for applause. All these rooms and sparks and passengers run on oxygen. Yes, the same oxygen that once scared the old world into hiding. You changed sides in that story and made a life out of it. In your lungs, oxygen slips across a membrane, so thin it should be poetry, binds to iron and red cells, rides to a cell that just now needs a sip more energy, then lets go and returns as carbon dioxide. Out it goes with your exhale, straight into the mouths of plants that will bank it as sugar and shimmer it back to you in the next apple, the next breath of green. You are in that cycle like a pearl in a shell, held, shaped, safe enough to sleep. The neighbors inside, you are not passive in this. Microbes talk to your immune system with molecules that sound like reminders. This is us, this is not. Now would be a good time to practice calm. When the mix is right, your defenses patrol with the confidence of professionals who've been trained on local maps. When a mix tips the wrong way, after stress, illness, a string of nights where sleep was a rumor, you feel it in places with names and places without. Skin gets fussy, mood goes gray around the edges, digestion throws a quiet tantrum. You don't have to moralize it. You just have to know that you can invite the good crowd back with time and kindness, the way a reef heals one polyp at a time when the water clears. There's a gentler scandal coming, and you're ready for it. Not all viruses are enemies, and not all bacteria are villains. Plenty of microbes in you, and on you are Switzerland. Neutral, harmless along for the ride. Some are Switzerland with a hobby, helping digest, nudging nerves toward peace, kicking rowdy outsiders off the porch. A few viruses target bacteria that would make you miserable and keep them in check like tiny bouncers who never ask you for a tip. It's a complicated neighborhood, and you are its mayor whether you meant to run or not. Luckily, most of the job is naps and snacks, and saying no to chaos. In the last hour, we've visited animals that can restart themselves. Jellyfish rewinding their life cycle, starfish regrowing limbs, planarian worms rebuilding from sliver. You can't regrow a finger by Friday, but your body's version of that resilience is quieter and daily. Tiny repairs, targeted replacements, a whole organ of regeneration in your skin and another in your blood. Your liver can shrug off insults you'd think were permanent. Your muscles answer damage with copy-paste stronger, and even your brain, long accused of being stubborn, sprouts new connections when you practice anything with kindness. You breathe, and your chest rises under your hands. Feel how many small yes it takes to make that one motion. Diaphragm contracts, ribs flex, cartilage yields, lungs expand, tiny sacs open, blood takes the gift. No single yes feels like achievement. Together, they feel like living. The bat used sound to paint its path. You use air to carry 1,000 unseen deals from cell to cell. Whisper, thank you, if you want to. Your body hears you most clearly through rest. That rest is a team sport, by the way. As you drift, glial cells in your brain help wash away the day's chemistry. Your immune system scrolls the feed and bookmarks the ignore this next time posts. Hormones surge at specific minutes, like trains you can set your watch by. One train releases growth hormone for repairs, another shuffles memories to a calmer folder, another runs the cleaning crew through your gut like a slow broom. The night crew wears headlamps you can't see and moves softly so you don't wake. You get to help them by doing less. Remember the leaf that divided its starch by hours to dawn? You can do that with thoughts. Set aside enough to make it a morning. One warm memory. One small plan you don't need for hours. The picture of the reef's moon snow or the elephant's long touch. And spend them slowly. The rest can wait on the pantry shelf of your cortex. If a panicky list elbows in, tell it what the Venus flytrap told the raindrop. One touch is nothing. 2 touches before 20 seconds, and maybe we'll act. Most worries are weather. They blow through. Your trigger hairs know the difference. Every part of you that can be kind to you already is. Nails grow, skin heals, blood clots, then yields, bone thickens where you ask it to. Even your habits try to help, recycling the path of least resistance until you either bless it or replace it. If there's a sentence you need right now, it might be the simplest we've learned from the forest and the reef and the blue that isn't pigment. What works, works. The rest can go dark for the night. Before we leave the city of you, there's one more quiet guest to bow to, the faint glow you carry. You can't see it in a mirror, but it's there, photons trickling from chemical reactions, a shimmer that peaks in late afternoon and fades with dusk. It's not glamour, it's bookkeeping and light. You are luminous by accident, which is the most honest kind. Couple that with the sparks, neurons whispering, and you begin to understand why sleep feels like a dimmer switch, not an on-off. You don't black out. You lower the room until the market stalls cover their goods, and the broom crew moves in, and even the bouncers take turns resting. Picture the microbes as little shopkeepers chalking a soft closed and flipping a sign. Picture your immune cells pouring tea for each other, reviewing the day's mischief with the bored confidence of pros. Picture the viral ghosts in your genome humming the old songs you didn't know were in your family. Picture your mitochondria, former free-living bacteria who moved in ages ago, powering down a notch and polishing their tools. Picture your blood, that traveling river, slowing along the edges like a moonlit stream. You're not off. You are precisely on in the direction called repair. And when you breathe out, remember the chain you belong to. Your exhale is someone else's breakfast. Your calcium is a star's last gift. Your cells are a crew that never clocks out. Your microbes are tenants with decent taste. Your genes are a library shelved by 1 billion librarians you'll never meet. Your thoughts are weather, and you are the climate that holds them steady. You're ridiculous and wonderful and so tired in the best way. We'll step out of you gently now and back into the wide world. The rivers that draw themselves tighter when wolves return, the deserts that make rain from trees, the green Sahara that used to be a memory and still whispers under sand, the earth's long, slow carbon breath. But you carry this city with you, the way a hermit crab wears a house, light, at home, ready to pause and begin again. One more long, soft inhale, one slow, longer exhale. Let the market dim, let the sparks lower, let the glow be enough to see one step and not the next. You're a walking ecosystem. You're allowed to rest. Step softly out of your own inner city, and the world meets you with breath you can see. In the largest forest on Earth, morning turns into mist the way tea becomes steam. The Amazon does not wait for clouds to arrive. It builds them. Every leaf opens tiny mouths and lets water go, a million exhalations rising at once. Sun warms the canopy, and the vapor climbs, cools, and knits itself into soft sky. Then the sky tips the bowl back over the trees. Rain falls. Roots sip. Leaves drink sunlight and do it again. It isn't poetry. It's plumbing and patience. If you could listen with weather's ears, you'd hear the forest whispering rain into being all day long. And here's the quiet part that feels like a secret you only tell at night. When enough of the forest is lost, the loop weakens. Less vapor rises, fewer clouds form, drought leans in, and the system has to work harder to keep its rhythm. You don't need graphs at 2 a.m. You only need the feeling of a living place making its own, whether like a baker making their own yeast. Hold that image, a green lung breathing out mist, then drinking it back in. Trees don't stop at water. They send messages through air, too. A caterpillar chews a leaf, and the plant releases a tiny perfume that says, "I'm under attack." Neighbors catch it and stiffen their defenses. Bitter compounds here, tougher tissue there, as if a warning text just pinged their group chat. The perfume can be specific, bug or fungus, cut or crush. The forest is not a chorus of screams. It's a network of useful nudges, calm and efficient. You remember the underground fungal threads that ferry sugar and signals, root to root, mother tree to seedling, and now you add this sky path to your map, leaf to leaf, through air. Watch how rainforests write their own clouds. Then tilt the map and look across an ocean to a memory carved in sand. The Sahara, which looks like a forever dry thought, used to be green. 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, monsoons reached higher, rivers braided across plains, lakes lay blue in basins where you now see beige, and hippos swam where today only wind grazes the ground. People drew giraffes on rock walls and boats on cave ceilings far from shoreline because shoreline was everywhere. Then orbital nudges shrank the rains. The green withdrew, and the desert remembered how to be a desert. Under the dunes, fossils sleep. Fish bones, pollen grains, old shorelines imprinted like faint fingerprints. The land keeps its own diaries, longhand. You don't need to decide whether deserts are sad or beautiful tonight. They are both and neither. What you keep is the sense that landscapes carry memory, and that memory can turn back on if the dance steps line up. Rains shift, winds change, vegetation returns, clouds start to make themselves again. The planet is not a statue. It's a dancer with more than one routine. For a softer reminder of time, leave sand for a trembling leaf. In Utah, there's a grove that looks ordinary until you learn its trick. Each trunk is a quaking aspen with coins for leaves, and each trunk is also not itself. Beneath the soil, they share one root system, one genetic identity, one old self sending up stems for centuries. The name locals gave the grove is Pando. I spread. You walk into it, and the word old stops being a number and becomes a feeling in your chest. Trunks die and regrow. Storms pull a few down. Fires singe. Moose nibble. The organism keeps breathing. It doesn't set records for height. It sets a record for persistence and for being a forest that is also one being. Somewhere else, under a different set of pines, another old thing hides better. An armillaria fungus threads itself through soil and wood with pale cords and owns more ground than any creature has a right to, thousands of acres in one patient body. You might only notice it when autumn sends up honey-colored mushrooms at the edges like a quiet signature. The real organism is the web below, feeding on roots, moving food, editing who lives where a silent landlord with a very long lease. It doesn't glow. It doesn't roar. It just exists massively and proves that scale can be secret. If the word largest makes your mind sprint toward competitions and crowns, soften it. The competition was over before we arrived. The better feeling is that the world holds whole cities of single cells we cannot see, that size has nothing to do with spectacle, and that the ground you walk is busier than you'll ever be. Step from root networks to roads drawn without surveyors. On a slab of agar in a lab, someone once laid oats in the pattern of a city's stations and let a slime mold loose. The slime mold has no brain. It spreads like curiosity, explores, retracts from dead ends, and leaves behind the shortest, strongest connections between food dots. When the day comes to prune, it edits with ruthlessness you wish your inbox had. When the results were compared to real rail lines, the match was good enough to make everyone grin. A brainless body solved a map with local rules and patience. You don't need the experiment to love the principle. Expand gently, test, keep what works, withdraw from what doesn't, leave behind a clean network for next time. Everything around you tonight is telling the same story in a dozen accents. Forests making rain for themselves, deserts remembering rivers, trees sending sugars to seedlings, fungi threading a continent, grove as individual, individual as grove, slime as engineer. The chorus grows, and then a voice rises from farther away than anything on land. Low, long, steady. Out beyond the reef you left earlier, a blue whale calls. The note is so deep your ribs want to answer. And if the sea is quiet enough, that call can travel farther than your entire day did, coast to coast underwater. These aren't random sounds. They are patterned dialects by region, phrases that change year to year the way songs do when a new singer adds a twist and others like it. It is communication built to cross an ocean. Lean closer in your head. Some species sing long, elaborate lines that evolve like folk songs, picked up, embellished, handed along. Others use shorter calls that say here and come, and this way across miles. We don't speak whale, and we do not have to. You can simply take the idea that a voice can hold steady over that distance and use it as a model for how calm might work. One tone, low and patient, carried by a medium you trust. In your chest, that medium is breath. In their world, it's water. Same idea. Beneath the whale's path, the ocean holds multitudes that make land look sparsely furnished. A drop of seawater is a crowded train at rush hour, plankton shoulder to shoulder with viruses, larvae, algae that harvest light, grazers that eat them, tiny predators that eat the grazers, all of them opening and closing the planet's lungs. Those algae make much of the oxygen you're breathing. They're the invisible half of the Amazon's trick, exhaling not mist but O2. You don't need to memorize percentages. You only need to feel grateful for the small, for the ordinary, for the fact that almost everything that matters happens where you're not looking. Lift again into story and scale. Life has been blindsided more than once. The rock record keeps count in mass extinctions. 5 big ones where most species vanished. The worst erased almost all marine life and most land species. The stories still turn a page. Survivors, small, tucked, lucky, weird, crawled out of the margins and started sketches that became whole new chapters. Forests after floods, dinosaurs after something else, birds and mammals after the rock that changed everything. If your day left you feeling fragile, remember that fragility is not the opposite of persistence. They travel together. You could be both and still wake. The earth helps by breathing on 2 tempos at once. There's the fast breath, leaves taking in carbon dioxide, building sugar, exhaling oxygen, day to night to day again. Then the slow one, volcanoes releasing carbon, rocks and oceans taking it back, shells falling as snow in deep water, limestone hoarding carbon like a banker with a fondness for rainy days. The fast breath helps you live. The slow one helps the climate stay roughly habitable across ages. Every so often, one or the other gets offbeat, and ice reaches for the equator or warmth climbs the hills. Life moves its share. Life survives. You've already walked through so many survival strategies tonight that your body is copying them without asking permission. Be a seed and wait. Be a tardigrade and pause. Be a frog and freeze. Be an ice fish and say no bigger to the crystals. Be a fox and change coats. Be a penguin and place pebbles. Be a camel and save. Be a kangaroo and delay. Be a termite mound and breathe smart. Be a beaver and slow the flood. Be a wolf and adjust the room just by showing up. Be a slime mold and edit the map. Be a tree and make your own weather. Be pando and send up new stems. Be the fungus and take your time. Be the whale and let one note carry. When you add them all together, clouds built leaf by leaf, deserts storing the memory of rivers, groves that are single beings, fungi that count acres, oceans humming with tiny lungs, songs crossing basins. You get a planet that is more loop than line. That might be the most useful thought you could take to bed. You're not walking a tightrope. You're lying in a hammock. The line's tied to trees you can't see and still hold. If a whisper of worry tries to turn this into homework, what do? Answer with the reef's advice. Small agreements, repeated. Or the forests. Feed the neighbors that feed you. Or the deserts. Remember, rain is possible even when you can't see a cloud. Or the whales. Choose one note and keep it steady. You do not solve a night. You experience it. You could end here and be fine, but the path has one more gentle turn before the last stretch. Tomorrow's dreams wait with tools and memory. Monkeys using medicine, birds with clever tricks, seeds that wake after centuries, stones that tell time. The final section will take you there, and then lay you down with words that lengthen until they feel like sleep itself. For now, settle into the feeling that the planet is already doing the slow, careful work of staying alive, and that you are allowed to match its pace. Close your eyes and watch the Amazon lift a fog by breathing. Tip your head and see the Sahara as it was, green rivers braided under a kinder sky. Walk into an aspen grove and feel one life moving through thousands of trunks. Stand over a buried web of fungus that has more patience than anyone you've ever met. Press a finger to the glass and feel a whale's song in your bones from an ocean you haven't seen since Section 7. None of this needs your supervision. You're here to let it hold you. The night is almost done with its teaching. One more inhale like a forest, slow and rich. One more exhale like rain. Let your own weather form and fall and return. You're in the loop now. It will carry you the last small distance to sleep. The path narrows to a soft thread and then opens on a small table the world set a long time ago and forgot. Dust, a cracked bowl, a seed that looks like a pebble. It is not a metaphor. It's a promise that decided to nap. Some seeds wait for weeks, some for winters, and a few for centuries. One dried date palm seed napped for 2,000 years under sand and silence, then met a gardener and a glass of water and decided, with admirable brevity, to be a tree. Others bide their time after fire, counting the heat as a signal, not a threat. The math is simple. Hold, go. You are allowed that logic too. Your life will give you hours that are all action, and then hours that are all waiting. Both count. Tilt your attention from the surface down through salt and light into the deep, black water where heat has its own weather. There are long cracks in the crust. Mineral-rich water erupts, and the ocean answers with towers of chimneys and white smoke that is not smoke. Around those vents, life keeps house without sunlight, eating stone instead of starlight, turning chemistry into sugar the way moss turns morning into food. If you were betting against life's imagination, this should end your career. The first metabolisms may have started in neighborhoods like this. Iron and sulfur swapping electrons in cozy pores of rock, simple membranes pinching off, mistakes becoming features because the future liked the error. The story puts its first roots there, in the dark, and never stops branching. Back at the surface, the day knows tricks that feel like magic even when they aren't. Flowers don't have ears, but some hear with their petals. A bee arrives humming at just the right frequency. The bloom vibrates, and within minutes the nectar sweetens, a quick welcome, whipped up while the guest hovers at the door. The bee brings its own superpowers. Eyes that register ultraviolet patterns painted on the petals like runway lights you can't see, maps that lead straight to the good stuff. Two small lives, tuned to each other's signatures, trade sugar for service, and call it a day. Elsewhere, a monkey doesn't feel well, and instead of waiting for a commercial break, it walks to a bitter plant it usually ignores, strips a bark that tastes like a dare, and swallows medicine the forest invented before we did. Zoopharmacognosy is the term, which is a long word for a short truth. Other animals also know how to help themselves. You can hold that fact like a warm cup. Knowing what to do is not a uniquely human hobby. You step around a rock and find a tide pool that tells jokes. A fish eyes you from the rim and then climbs the rock, because of course it does. Mud skippers walk with fins that forgot the memo, breathing through damp skin and the edges of their mouths, popping up to survey the real estate like little land agents who forgot their ties. An eel makes a night errand across wet grass between streams because the map says the next page is better. On coral, a clownfish hierarchy flips when the queen dies. The top male becomes female, the role fits like a suit it had in the closet, and the story continues. Nearby, a wrasse switches the other way, female to male, because the neighborhood needs one. Identity, it turns out, is sometimes a job description with benefits. Still underwater, a brain with arms stares back with curiosity you can feel. Octopuses edit their RNA, those molecular scripts between DNA and protein, on the fly, tinkering with the parts list when the temperature changes or the neighborhood gets weird, fine-tuning neurons in real time. They are already shapeshifters and lockpickers and jailbreakers with a gift for inconvenient doors. But this is a different kind of magic, a body that rewrites its own translation mid-sentence and still tells a story that makes sense. You are not doing that tonight, and you don't need to. It's enough to know that even the rules are negotiable for some. The mirror offers its own surprises. Self-recognition is rare and scattered like bright stones in a river. Great apes, dolphins, elephants, magpies, maybe manta rays, a fish with a taste for testing lines. Mark the skin where the eye can't see, show a reflection, and watch a trunk or beak or fin check the right spot on the real body. That's me, says a brain that didn't learn the word me. It's not proof of human-style consciousness. It's proof that awareness can carry a small lantern across very different rooms. The rooms multiply until they're a city again, this time a metropolis made of chitin and muscle. Insects are everywhere, a majority report written in wings and mandibles. For every one of us, there are hundreds of millions of them, pollinating, shredding, stacking, burying, feeding armies of things you love and a few you don't. Beetles alone are an argument for absurd abundance. If you ever feel outnumbered by obligations, remember that the ground beneath you is an economy run by beings with no calendars, and it works anyway. A starfish slides across the shallow reef and leaves the faintest trail, like a fingertip across fog glass. Lose an arm to a hungry mouth, and it will grow another. In some species, a single arm with part of the central disc will knit itself back into an entire star, patient stitches done with cells that remember the blueprint from scratch. A planarian flatworm takes that audacity and doubles it. Slice into pieces, and each piece becomes a whole. Not brave, just built that way. You and I can't manage such theater, but our skin, our blood, our bone practice the principle every day: cut, clot, knit, remodel, until the work looks like a scar and then like nothing at all. The edges of the map keep offering unexpected helpers. In hot, acid pools that look uninhabitable, microbes build lives that think pH 1 is a spa day and 80 degrees Celsius is a nice warm bath. In soils full of our cast-off plastics, bacteria and fungi evolve enzymes that nibble and then chew what we thought would last forever, a slow-motion cleanup crew figuring out the locks we built on accident. They're not a free pass, and they shouldn't be needed as badly as they are. But when the day is heavy, it helps to know that life keeps inventing janitors for our messes, even as we learn to make fewer messes in the first place. Clever doesn't always look like calculus. Sometimes it looks like a frog swallowing with its eyes, pressing the food down with a blink, because evolution didn't see any reason to waste a good push. Sometimes it looks like a pigeon reading your face and filing it correctly. Sometimes it looks like a platypus with a bill that reads the electric whispers of prey under muddy water, laying eggs, feeding milk through skin, and wearing a venom spur, because why not be a mammal and a legend at once? If your inner sarcasm wants to clap here, let it. If it wants to nap, let it do that too. You step on a tundra in your mind, and summer arrives like a drum roll. 8 weeks of yes, and everything blooms at once. Mosses and tiny flowers throw a party. Insects show up overdressed. Birds race through courtship, and small mammals stuff their pantries like a grandmother the day before a storm. Then it's over, and the land goes quiet, storing the music for next time. The rhythm is short, sharp, honest. You can live like that for a night, a brief, bright bloom of attention, and then the long, soft dark where nothing is asked of you. Look up, and the moon remembers your reef, whispering the date to corals so they can snow their children into the sea. Look down, and the ground remembers your forest, sending mist back to leaves that asked for it by simply existing. Look inward, and the neurons that wrote your day begin to file underdone, sparks slowing, glial brooms moving, hormones tapping shoulders with kindness. Somewhere in a tunnel under Africa, a naked mole rat slides through air that would panic you and lives long, with cells that ignore cancer, with bodies that stay weirdly the same from youth to age, a small teacher reminding you that the rules bend when evolution wants a new trick. If an old fear tries one last time to give you homework, fix the planet, fix yourself, fix everything. Answer with a sentence you've learned by repetition tonight. Life keeps finding new ways to begin again. Seeds wait. Vents cook. Flowers listen. Bees red invisible paint. Monkeys doctor themselves. Fish walk. Fish change. Octopuses edit. Mirrors confess. Insects govern quietly. Starfish reprint themselves. Worms refuse to be undone. Microbes eat what we drop. Frogs blink their dinner's home. Platypuses cheat at categories. The tundra throws one loud festival and then sleeps. And you, with your pockets full of these small truths, can do the simplest thing that keeps all the other things possible. Breathe slowly and rest. You don't need an oath. You don't need a plan. You need the feeling that everything you've walked through is already in motion without your supervision. Tomorrow, curiosity will tug, and you can get up, pick one small pebble like a penguin, and place it where it will lift something you love. But tonight, you can leave the pebble in your palm and let your hand go slack. Nothing else is required. Let the pace ease now, long and low, like a tide that has decided the shore is safe enough to kiss and leave, kiss and leave. Let your breath lengthen until the ends of each inhale blur into the beginnings of each exhale, and the space between thoughts feels wider than the space between stars. Picture the reef far behind you, still building in patient layers you will never see. The forest turning light in a mist and giving it back as rain. The desert holding the memory of green like a photograph tucked in a wallet. The seed in the dark, sure of its timing. The whale singing one note into a room big enough to hold it gently. Let words thin into images, and let images soften at the edges until they glow like fireflies seen through a screen. A small wave curls and lays itself down. A leaf turns its face to night and closes tiny doors. A fox blends into snow without trying. A bat draws a line in the air that only it can follow, and then it rests its wings. Somewhere under the soil, roots exhale sugar into a shared web, and the ground breathes back a promise older than names. You're under that promise now. The room is a nest shaped perfectly to your outline. Gravity is kind. The fan keeps a distant ocean in its throat and hums you steadily towards sleep. Whatever tomorrow asks can wait on the porch until morning. It will still be there, smaller for having been ignored by someone very wise for a few hours. Let your jaw loosen. Let your shoulders melt a fraction deeper. Let your tongue rest like a leaf on water. If a thought taps the window, thank it softly and watch it drift away, lighter than mist. Breathe in. Breathe out. Begin again by doing nothing at all.